Great episode today. We're going to talk about Craigslist, La La Land, Bardo, imperceptible camera moves, and how could we not talk about Sharknado? Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. Make sure to check out our website, theop.io, and if you like it, become a member so you can watch the breakdown where operators talk about everything that goes into the making of a shot, and read the musings where we talk about everything from quick tips to larger concepts behind operating. I may or may not take a couple of breaks during this episode, but I promise you none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. If you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, like us, talk about us, and share us with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello and welcome to The Op, the podcast where we talk about operating with operators and other people in the industry and the art of visual storytelling. My name is Dave Comides. I'm your host, and we are here in the fabulous Panavision Woodland Hills Theater, which they graciously have allowed me to use for the sound quality because it's better than the shower in the master bedroom. Today, I am really excited to have a great operator, great Steadicam operator, great Trinity operator, Ari Robbins. Some of Ari's credits, but not all of them. Bardo, which he was nominated for the SOC Operator of the Year Award for last year. White Noise, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which some people may have heard of. La La Land, which some people may have heard of. I imagine you didn't work on this much, but I have to say Parks and Recreation because it's one of my favorite TV shows. Sharknado, because there's no way I can't say Sharknado. And music videos, Taylor Swift, Childish Gambino, Radiohead, Arcade Fire, Paul McCartney, Justin Timberlake. The list goes on and on. Ari, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I looked at your list of stuff, and it's just like, whoa, this is incredible. So what's your story? How'd you get here?
It feels like a much harder question to answer when you have all of that leading. You're like, wow, wait, I guess I did those things. Yeah. It makes it feel like a much longer story, but I was thinking about a term of how I would describe how I got here, because that was one of those things I was like, I should probably think about a good answer for that before I get there. And I was kind of thinking of the term, I was a Craigslist kid. One of the Craigslist kids, like one of the I think there was like probably a gap between 5 or 10 years there between like 2004 and 2015 where people really did use Craigslist. Because I didn't go to school. I didn't do any of that.
Okay.
I could barely sit still. Like, this will probably be that, and then I'll just be jumping around for like the rest of the day because that's how it is. So school was not.
Yeah, not your thing.
No. And then I moved to LA, and I was like, well, all right, I'll try to do the community college film here. But I just kind of knew it was like.
But you wanted to be in the film industry?
I knew I was going to be in the film business simply because my older brother, he's 3 years older than me, and he moved to New York. We were in California.
Okay.
He moved to New York. He started going to school, and I was like, oh, okay, so there is actually something you could do. I'm still not going to school, but it's cool to know that
some people do that.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, all right. So I at least understood it. Like, okay, there's film sets, there's work out there. I mean, we always loved movies growing up. That was just like our thing. Dad would take us all the time. We'd watch them all the time. So there was always like an appreciation for film. But until that, there was no idea. I mean, I was really doing nothing and not going to college. I'll spare you on the things I was doing in my free time at that time.
That's another podcast.
Yeah, that's a totally different one. Those skills come into handy later, but not necessarily the same thing. But you're 18 and you have to figure out what to do. And there's only so much you can really just waste your time.
Yep.
So about like 1920, I moved to LA because it was like, I'm not going to get any further if I want to take on this whole film as a lifestyle, film as a job, film as your career.
And how old are you at this point? You said you're 18?
I'll be 40 in January.
But I'm sorry.
At that point, I was like 19, 20. So it's 20. So this is 20 years ago, 20-year span. So that's been the life of it. And I moved to LA, and really, if you didn't go to school, you didn't start with anyone. If you didn't have like family members or people that you knew, then you weren't going to just like happen into jobs. And then lo and behold, there was Craigslist, the great and holy Craigslist. That was literally my job application every day. And I would sit because I wasn't working a lot. And first I started like gripping and doing other things, and then I stumbled across Steadicam. I feel like there's always some way you hear about it or some way you get introduced, and then you're like, that's it.
That was it for me, by the way.
Yeah, it has that weird like effect. It's just it's like inherent. You just kind of say, you know what, I really see myself enjoying this, and I think I could do it. I blame Nick Franco, for those who know who he is. He's at fault.
Yeah. I think, by the way, there is some sort of recessive gene that looks at a Steadicam and goes, that's something I want to do.
Yeah.
Because most people are like, do not get that.
No reason why you would ever do it. It's definitely a strange thought, but then that was the thing. So, you know, it took a little while to like figure it out. I took a workshop, and it took a minute to like get gear. And then, I mean, at that point, I bought a Model 3. So this was when, I guess this was pre-Ultra, so this was Master Series were out.
Okay. So these are basically, for people who don't know, these are different types of Steadicams.
Yeah. So there were digital Steadicams. I guess that would be the appropriate way. More like digital. I want to say digital Steadicams, but that's a little different than what we use today.
Yeah. But smaller versions that would be for a digital camera.
Yeah, were things where your applications were changed. So I bought a really low grade rig because I didn't know any better.
Sure.
So I bought a Model 3. I mean, I didn't even have side to side. So like I couldn't even adjust my camera left and right. And I'm working with these like really bad film packages from schools, like bad schools around the Los Angeles basin, which was a great learning curve. But it really was. It was Craigslist. I would go on every morning, and it would be like, refresh that screen on your home computer
because
every
people
hour.
were saying, we're making a movie, and we're
making a low-budget movie. We're
Yeah.
doing a low-budget short film. We're doing this. And that was – and someone – there's a guy who told me, he was like – this was back pre, you know, all the YouTube, all the things like that. And he used to make his own B movies.
Okay.
You know, he would direct them, he'd shoot them.
Sure.
He had cameras, he had lights, he had the stunt gear, all
Like
his
Roger
friends.
Corman light.
Basically, because that was how he made his bread and butter for years, and that was, you know, a real thing. At the point that I came along, that just seems crazy. And of course, obviously, I don't think they're still in business.
No, I did work down there, and it was interesting to say the least.
That vibe really that was a way to get work when you were young. So those existed, and I remember him telling me when I was probably like 20 years old, this guy who, you know, who I looked up to, he was paying my bills at that point. Just, you'll be a PA today, you'll be a grip today, you'll be an electrician.
okay.
Like that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And I was like talking about, well, maybe I'll go do the Steadicam class. And he was like, you know what? You either own or you create in this business, or you don't bring anything to the table. And that really stuck out with me. Anyways, he fired me that day. He was like, go and do that class.
Commit.
And I did. And it all worked out.
And did you take like a cinema products class or something like that?
It was the SOA workshop.
Okay, Steadicam Operators
Association. out in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. So
Cool. Oh, okay.
And then came back and bought one, but then that's what it was. I had shitty gear. I would go on Craigslist every morning, and I'd apply to any job. Because the way I looked at it was, if I wasn't working and I could go to set and use my Steadicam, and if I got even just food for the day, that was cheaper than me being at home.
Yeah.
And that literally was, I mean, you know, a good few years of living that way. But I'd get really excited when someone would be like, pay $150. I was like, oh
I
my
remember
God.
those days.
I mean, I'd show up in this like car that's just been smashing everything. My gear's older than I am. Like, it just was like, but it was like, what were you, those are students. You know, they had $100 and I had a rig. And at this point, this was at a time, I don't think there was a lot of people even doing that or even going out and saying, could I even get a Steadicam guy for $100?
Yeah.
And it was the only way to get started. So that took like years of like building up. So I kind of like think of it as like I was like a Craigslist kid. That was my whole way of
But that's where you
existing.
cut your teeth. And for me, it was these low-budget, horrible music videos for a company called FM Rocks that did.
Oh God, I know. I worked with them too.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, of course.
They were like
when you moved on and you were like,
Did
I'm
you
done
take
with
over
these
for me?
basic, more or less though in time, and
Yeah.
that's and.
But
I
it was
think-
just like everybody was just psyched that you were there, and you were psyched to be there, so you couldn't
you had
really
a good
screw
time.
up.
Yeah, you learned, you
Yeah.
shot, and like sometimes you shot things that you really were like, that was cool. I didn't know I could do a
I didn't know it
frame
did
like
that or whatever, yeah.
And it kind of gave you your own way to explore how to even move or shake a camera,
100%.
or to just time, because you're just like, you also would work with people. You're like, these people are not major performers yet. So,
No.
you know, they would do stuff that you're like, this is not going to, if you're 2 inches from my lens, I cannot frame, you know, and so you'd start to learn how to deal with people.
There's no question about
And
that.
that was,
Yeah.
to me, that was the best learning curve, was that lifestyle. But that was Those
That's
shitty
fantastic.
music videos.
That's really
those
funny
were-
that you worked for FM Rocks.
Oh yeah,
Did
I
you
mean, I
do-
was excited when I got those because that to me at that point that was like you.
That was like high quality.
Yes, it was like you built to get there because
Yeah.
it was like you. I mean, how do you get the trust of like how do you get the callback for the second job? And when you show up with really bad gear
Yep.
and you're not very good at your job and you like have like one facial hair, and like everyone there's
Your
older
voice is
than
still
you.
changing.
Because this
Yeah.
was still at a time too when you would see people in their mid-30s who just decided to go to film school, like because this was still at a time where, you really were like everyone who got into the film industry, whether you were young or new, it was a much bigger commitment than a time now where everything's streaming, everybody has phones,
Sure.
everybody's like
Yeah.
you
You
could
really
be a
had to
YouTube
commit to
star
it.
and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
actually make great stuff that people are interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, when you started, same thing. It was like that's
No.
not that wasn't even foreseeable.
No,
It's-
absolutely.
it's crazy to think, but yeah,
That's interesting.
the 5 years of that, I think ultimately, you those were the seed planting, and then everything that ever happened to get to here stemmed from those meeting people in those first 5 years, because those people turned into the people that brought you to year 8 or 9,
Yep.
and then you met someone there that brought you to year 15, and I think that's
It all goes back to that.
it all goes back to literally, and I honestly could say I probably work for like 1% of those people from those days, but everything spawned from there. So I don't know how.
Look,
yeah.
that's an incredible it's an incredible lesson for people who are starting out. Is number one, you never know who's going to come back around. Never,
Ever.
And by the way, and I've actually had this. I have shown up on a commercial where the director came up to me and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe you got me." And I'm playing the game where it's like, my wife isn't here to ask his name, so I have to pretend I know him, and I'm like, "Hey, it's good to see you." And he's like, "Yeah, I was a PA last time we worked together." And then I'm like, "Oh my God, now I know who you are."
Yeah.
You 2 years ago, this guy was a PA, and
it's a real thing that happens.
There's no question about it. So there's that, and then there's also just it's 90% of this business is making those connections so that when that next job comes up, they're like, "Oh, you know what? Ari was great. Remember Ari? Yeah. Let's call Ari."
It's crazy. It's also just being. There's a happiness. I think there's this thing about it where you make people happy because you do a good job. That extends.
Yeah.
They talk to other people. Those people they hear about you. They know that's all good. But it turns out to even be. And I always say to people as well is you never know who it is, because I used to think in the beginning days. And I still don't think anything's changed. I think nothing's changed about this. It's actually might not be the director or the DP or the producer who's going to get you your next job at all.
It sounds outlandish, but it's not, only because there are 9 million ways to get a job. And what you got to do is just constantly be putting out there a good vibe, the best work you can and whatever, because like you said, you never know where that's going to resonate.
Never.
Yeah.
I when I was young, I think for me, because I was so young and I was so adamant about getting forward, moving quickly, you can only do so many free days before you're like, all right, I want to like, I want to actually have gear that works now. I want to actually, I had to get someone to customize my top stage for me to be able to get it to side, because I was like, I couldn't afford a new top stage.
The top stage, for people that don't know, is the top of the Steadicam, and now they all have side-to-side balance and fore and aft balance. But back then, and I had a Model 1 originally.
Yeah, so
it didn't have
couldn't do
side-to-side,
that.
so you basically, and it was like you would try to figure out where to put the camera in, the screw in the camera, and it was never where you wanted to
No,
be.
it was
always
always
like
offset
1 inch,
or slightly
so
over.
you'd like take
Yeah.
a small weight and hang it on the side, and it's just stupid stuff. Yeah, but
You're-
you did it. But you
you're
made it
moving
work.
the eyepiece. If well, if I bend the eyepiece down, it actually pulls this weight. Like it was really crazy.
Yeah, and you're looking
shit.
at the assistant. They're like, "Give me that thing off your belt. I'll tape this up here, and that'll work." Yeah,
And one day, and for me, it was like one day you'd be working with people who don't know the difference, and then one day you'd be working with someone who's like, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never seen someone come in and do something like that. And I had some experiences where things like that, where you're like, yes, there's a lot to learn.
That's great. I to your point, I had an old Model 1, which was the first. As a matter of fact, when they first made the Steadicams, they made Model 1s. Well, before that, they made a sort of prototype thing called the 35. But the ones they sold were the Model 1s, and they made 25 of them. And I had model number, I had serial number 23. So I literally had the first group of Steadicams, and 8, 9 people had it before me. And I remember I used to bring it onto the music videos. And there was one DP, I can't remember who it was, but he used to every time he'd come, I'd bring it out, and it was all like taped up, and it was ridiculous. And I was soldering stuff. And I remember one day he goes, "I like that rig. It's kind of ghetto." And I remember thinking like, okay, I'm just going to go with ghetto being good because I don't have any other choice.
I don't really feel good about that, but I get it.
I'm going to take that as a compliment. But yeah, it worked, whatever.
I mean, I felt like the fun of those days was everything like breaking. Yeah. Like I mean, it wasn't fun. It
wasn't in the moment, but looking
back. Not in
back.
the moment, but I remember the feeling of going to work and like, I remember this happening. I forget what it was. I think it was something like the monitor port on like an old trans video SD got pulled, and that was my onboard monitor because at this point my rig had just been shredded.
So basically, the monitor that you were looking at to do the shot wouldn't work.
And I was doomed. So I think I worked for like $500, and then I got the bill to replace it, and it was like $350, and it was like I'm sure it was some either crappy music video or it was like a weird short film or something like that, and I'm sure what it was probably my own like fault. Yeah. Because I know during those times you're like, at that time it was like, this is your survival blood. Like this old ancient piece of gear that could break or fall apart at any moment. That literally is just like a bare wire.
But it's your future.
But it's literally everything that's gonna like if something goes wrong. And I remember like, yeah, I was probably rushing and I pulled it, and I just know that it just loosened up the connector to the monitor, and that was probably it. But that's 2 hours of servicing that I can't afford.
That you can't afford.
And and it was probably just like rushing and just trying to be the best that I can and doing it and smashing that, and then being like, okay, so I finally got like a $500 a day job, and now I spend $350 that, and I can't work, and like it was just nuts that was the tit for tat. But I remember because I was always behind the 8 ball. Yeah. And that was what, and I think about it, if life in our business of being in the film business is not struggling, then I don't know where you're going to get some of your backbone. Whatever you do, whatever part of like, I don't care what you do in our industry. If you don't have some suffrage, I'm sorry, it's going to be hard for you to like navigate the hard times. That is our film business.
Well, because essentially there's going to be suffering no matter what.
It's
so you better get it early, and then hopefully it's a lot, and then it gets less, and not nothing, and then it gets more.
But it's always going to be there.
But but I think that's one of those things. Sorry to cut you off, but it's one of those things where if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
It has to. That's the key to. Yeah. That's the key to figuring out how to live in our business. Is like a really like tough plant that you would plant in like a desert. Like it's like that's how you're gonna have to grow.
And look, I mean, to that end, and I've talked to other people about this. You're gonna get passed over for jobs. You're gonna get fired.
Yeah, you're gonna get fired for things that you cannot control.
Yeah, you're gonna say things that, and by the way, sometimes you're gonna get fired for things you can control. Where after the fact, the only thing that makes you stronger is you look back and go, you know what?
I was an idiot.
I pretty much deserved that.
Yep. So I did this. This is like my worst week of filming I ever chose to do. I did like 96 hours straight.
Oh,
because it was like, what do? You're trying to make money. You're trying to get your name in there. I didn't want to say no to jobs.
But so you're like triple booking or whatever.
I was basically start on a Friday and then finish Wednesday morning.
Oh God, I never did anything that bad, but I think I did like 2 days straight or something once or whatever.
And that's like everyone in our business should know that too. Like you're going to work 24-hour days because things are going to matter so much to you at the time that you're going to put yourself through it.
And just for clarity's sake, it's not smart. It's not safe. You probably shouldn't do it, but
it's
at some point everybody's going to do it.
And that's just the reality. If you care about something, it's going to, whether if it's even one day at work and you just do it for 24 hours.
Yeah, but 96 hours.
And so I'd do this whole thing, and it was like literally, it would be like, I would be like, I'll get $600 to work on this non-union crappy commercial for some brand that no one's ever heard of and no one ever will, but they're shooting on film and they need someone really good. Yeah. And like that's why you're spending next to nothing to hire. No, okay, I get it. And then I would jump to like a music video at night for someone who's like, oh, maybe this DP or maybe this, and I did all that up. But lo and behold, we get to like Wednesday afternoon, like my final job, and I hired my buddy to like, you'll drive me to sets. And
I'll sleep in the car.
Exactly, do that whole thing. You go in and tell when they need me in an hour, wake me up. That kind of vibe. And I go and I do this short film, and it's the lowest paid of them all. But I said yes because it was one shot, and it was this really nice guy who called me, and I like this guy. He's like, I've been a dolly grip for 20 years. And I'm just making my short film, and I just want to be a director, and I just need a Steadicam.
That's cool.
And I wouldn't want. And he said to me, because I wouldn't ask any operator on the show to come and do this. I knew all the operators. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't either. Fuck, like those are the big guys.
Yeah.
And I go out and
You mean the show that he was doing
that he was
as
the
a
dolly
job,
grip
yeah.
on. And I go out and I do it because I was like, you just didn't feel right to say no. I really liked who it was.
That's great.
And I never worked with that person again. So it's not about that. And
Yeah.
but the DP he hired was also the DP who shot that show. I had no idea.
Okay.
So I show up to like some backyard's house with his like kids doing this scene, and it's like, can you just like do this low mode shot like up a little hill for them? I was like, yeah, man, no problem. Super nice people. But I'm saying to myself, like, here's two guys who like, they're like grips and they're just trying to do their own thing, and it's like, you
not
just
realizing that
respect
the DP is actually an established dude.
No idea.
Yeah.
So I do this, and I'm just nice and sincere after being tired because you treat everybody well, you do the right thing, you committed, you do the best shot you can, and that's it. And I never thought any of it. I took my like $200 and was like, hooray, I'm going to sleep.
Yep.
And like 6, 7, 8 months later, I get this weird job on Warner Brothers lot where they're like, all you're going to do is you're going to go around with our internal marketing, and you're going to do one shot of like the sets of all these big shows that we have.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I'm like, cool. That's
promo
because I've
thing or
never been
Cool.
in Sound of Sound.
Right.
Never stepped foot
You're
in
like,
these
this
things.
is the big
And
time.
it was so cool. And I was like, at that point, I'd not done enough little jobs to be like, okay, I can walk onto these. Like, I won't just burn up and they'll be like, you there. You're not allowed here. You're not good enough to be in this room.
Like the alarm will go off.
Yeah,
when you
they're
go
like,
through the
sir,
gates.
you're just not, and you have that feeling because it's such a beautiful thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's like it has this mystique from being, from student films to driving by this thing to saying one day, and they all like cut. Go to lunch. We do our shot, and the DP comes back early, and he's like, "Oh, what's up, man? How you doing?" I was like, "Oh, no, not go." He's chit. He's like, "So what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just doing this shot." Da 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 da. And I was like, "What about you?" And he goes, "Well, I shoot this show." And this
is the dude from the
this is
short
the
film.
dude from
Yeah,
the short
yeah,
film,
yeah.
and then he must have saw my whole brain just like melt, just like wait. But I guess maybe that's what it was. But it was like, he was like, no, this is the show I shoot. Thank you so much for doing that. Are you union? And I was like, no. And he was like, well, keep up with us and let us know. And sure enough, that was the first show I did. It was Larry Riebman, and it was Pretty Little Liars.
Wow.
And it was one.
That's pretty cool.
It was what I mean. Literally, that started, and Brian Bernstein was like the operator that took me under, and like that was the beginning of it, going from like a Craigslist kid to being like, you've met your first person who will take you on and do it. And I'll tell you, I pissed off everyone else that weekend on those jobs because I was really tired. And I remember in that weekend, it was this music video, and I remember talking to my brother, and he's like, dude, that DP's like signed at like this agency. He's like pretty big. And I remember saying to myself, that was Saturday. I remember rooting that. I was like, well, I screwed that job up.
Yeah,
That
well,
shit
but
sounds crazy.
it's work begets work. Like I got this and I got this, and then you happen to be on something that hits, and then someone else sees it, and this and that and the other. So you didn't get La La Land off of Craigslist.
No, I didn't get. But you know what's also weird? But I also did in a way, and that's what's trippy about it. Because I always feel like there's that game of like 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
If you did that for how you got to a place, you'd be like, whoa. You would actually probably be shocked how far you'd say the relationship you had that got you
Sure.
a place. But music videos got me to La La Land, and music
Makes
videos
sense.
I got because when you're a 20-something-year-old. And you don't go to school, so you're meeting these people. You get kind of brought into but that same group is also how I got Everything Everywhere All at Once. So in the same thing, they're all attached.
Yeah.
And I think you could never predict it. Now I don't know how I got to Sharknado. That's a fun one. I don't know how that happened.
Let's talk about Sharknado for a minute, because it just has to be. I mean, first of all, was there a script?
I don't even know. I honestly don't even know. So this, I was never one of those people who took anything as like, I treat people the way I think I treat people, and hopefully the time I did pretty well. I'm sure I didn't most of them, but I try.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's the reality is like I always say, like, to people, I say, the more I go, the less I know, because that just feels like life.
That's just getting older, man.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
You're like...
Wait till you have teenagers.
That's, oh gosh,
Yeah, that's a
There's
whole nother
other
thing.
adventures
Trust
coming.
me. So Sharknado.
I met a group of people who were doing same thing. We were doing this cool, like, special effects, horror monster, like, short film, small movie or something like that. Like, again, BC movies, 10, 15-day shoots, whatever. They need 2 days of Steadicam. and they were all working people, but not like they were working people, and they were also trying to rise, and you could feel that. And became one of my best friends. He passed Tony Magaletta the first day.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know him, but I knew the name.
A lot of people have heard. He's like the biker pirate that he's like as if Pirates of the Caribbean walked off the set and then was like got onto your set. That was him. He was awesome. A lot of people love him. But he went from miniature sets. And then he went from miniatures, and when he would always do like that kind of second unit, miniature unit way back when it would be those kind of things. Oh, okay, so same thing. So he went from there into like asylum movies because it was a way for him to go. You don't have to go and just shoot like the little explosion effects. You could start shooting actors.
Wait, he went from there into what movies?
Into like Asylum, which is the company that would make
that's a company.
Sharknado. The company was called Asylum. He didn't go to the Asylum. So maybe by doing those movies,
movie.
He should have gone
to. So it's some low budget.
So it was basically a low budget company that would do like 10, 15, 20, 30 low budget movies like a week. I mean, Jesus. They were like no script. No,
those were around.
Sharknado is obviously the output of something like this. But it was for his way to do it. So I met him on this short film. We just got along as people. He goes into this, and he's like, we haven't seen each other times. So he's like, oh, dude, just come and work on these. We'll get to hang out. And I said, you know what? This is like Red M1 days where it was like, everything's mishmash. Everybody's kind of, it's like it's a
red
free
camera
for all.
when it first came out.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Red camera.
The thing
right
that I
when it
remember
came
big
out.
time about that was the first time I've ever used it. I had to do a whip pan, and I whipped, and it turned off, and the AC was like, "Oh yeah, if you whip that fast, the battery will come off." And
it'll
I'm like,
stop.
This seems like a flaw. I don't know. But, so what are we gonna do? And he's like, "Well, maybe you could do more of a body." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
You can't.
But that was the early days of the
early
Red.
days.
Yep.
That was life. So this was like same thing. It was like. I mean, there was a certain point where your career's not, it's not going to be anywhere, and it's not going to go anywhere, and it's not going to get any better if you're not out there trying to make it better.
Yeah.
So I was like, fuck it, I'll go make a few $100. And I'll go be with my friends.
And also to that point, I think it's that thing of like, I could sit home, which is not going to help my career, or I could go out and potentially meet someone and just like you did, you did here.
Everything was like you meet people, and some of those people you just like. And this was one of those people who he's just come and work with me, bug me all the time. We talk on the phone. Come on, I don't get to see you enough because you're always working on other things. Come and slum it with me. It's basically what it was.
Sure.
And I had no idea what the movies we worked on. I couldn't tell you. For the first 5 years, I didn't even know I worked on that movie.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
I don't even know if I actually did, to be honest.
Yeah, but
in my they just were like, throw them in.
Showdown, yeah.
But it was just.
But also, by the way, another thing you can take out of that is you show up, it's some crappy movie, there's a pickle at craft service, and there's no money, and there's this, and you're like, whatever. And then 5 years later, your name's on Sharknado, and people are probably looking at your resume going, you worked on Sharknado? Yeah. That's kind of fun. Because the bottom line is, really what you want to do is you want to stand out.
You just want to do what you want to do.
Yeah, and if Sharknado is the reason you stand out,
woke up and went out and had a great day,
and
you got better at your career, and I'll admit,
and you're practicing. You're being paid to practice your art.
Exactly. You're being paid to practice, but you're being paid to do something that you can't get anywhere else, which is in a crappy movie scenario like that, where you have one take to do a 7-page scene that half the actors don't know, and they're like, you've got to get it. You actually learn how to manipulate dealing with so many different improv, no marks, no hits, but you still have to keep that light up, but you still have to you learn tricks that will be the only reason you'll be good at your job later.
I think so. And there's a great point to take out of that, which is, there's two things. One is, like you said, to me, and I always viewed it this way, it's like, at that point, I would just take anything. And actually, I've said this before because I wanted more experience. They'd be like, look, we only have this budget. And I'd be like, well, listen, if you paid me the same amount of money but did 7 days instead of 5 days, would that work? Because I just wanted more work.
And you
right?
knew at the time too. You're like, I'm not working on anything
so I'm not taking away from anything else.
There's the people who are we're currently in a strike, and I don't think the people in a strike was like, Dave, you took that movie 27 years ago and you did this, and that's why I'm here now.
It doesn't make a difference in the long run.
But
all I wanted to do was work. And the other thing, but you brought up an interesting point is, you don't have the money, you don't have the time. Everybody's go, and what it ends up doing, it's like swinging with two bats, right?
Yeah.
And so first of all, you learn how to work that way. So when you slow down, you can just be that much better.
It's a home run every hit.
But also the other part of it is, you gather this sort of like weird like box of information of how to quickly fix things.
Exactly.
That when you're on Bardo and the sun is going down and you have one take of it and you're like, oh God, there's a tree root right in front. Oh, I remember I did this and that, and I'll know how to, or whatever.
Fine.
Yeah.
And you can navigate. And I honestly think that was I still think the next generation, everybody's always going to do it. No matter what. Whoever's the next generation, whoever listens forever, will always be in this phase of learning as they're growing. And that is...
It should be.
It's the most sacred time.
Yeah.
Like really it is, because it is. It's the learning curves that you'll just never understand how they'll translate.
And there's another thing about, and I mean, you're hitting on all these points that so many other people have hit on in so many different ways, is that you can plan your career or your trajectory or whatever all you want, but it's not going to happen that way. You just have to be open to what's coming your way and just embrace it and go, I don't know whether I should take this movie. I'm going to take this movie. You know what? I'm going to do the best job I can on this movie and be the best person that I can, and something will come.
Something will happen if I follow that.
Because it's like, that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
I can't look back to that because this is what I'm doing now. And something 9 times out of 10, something does come out of it.
It's
or you learn something from it.
You
get fired and you learn.
Yeah, you get fired.
But hopefully not often.
Yeah, exactly. And if it does happen, then you ask questions and you make changes. But
yeah.
I remember the first time my sled as a junior, went down. This was like pre-arm tattoos, which I'll have to explain to you if I haven't at some point. But this was like 23, 24 years old. And I was being flown. No, I was driving up to Humboldt, California to do this low-budget movie, shooting on film. And they wanted me to use a Panavision G2.
Okay, which is a heavy camera.
Which is a heavy camera for anywhere. Yeah, for anywhere, whether you're on a sound stage or that. So obviously we're out in Humboldt walking hills. So naturally what you should do is probably put a Steadicam with a ghetto rig who's probably second year. Yeah. This is definitely how you should make your movie. Yes. So I get out there, and this was my first experience with really having things go wrong, and then that being the start of probably what was a catalyst to go right.
Okay.
And this was that, I remember it because they were back to back, just absolute failures. It was like one of those low budget movies, which I'm sure everyone back in the days, and I'm sure these people still exist. Hopefully, there's less, where like you really do feel like you're working for people who don't care for you whatsoever and will screw you out of every penny. And that was the low budget, no contract kind of game then. I remember we're using a G2. We're not very experienced. I remember, I won't say who the AC is. I was very well experienced now. But I remember they're like, well, why can't you do this like 150 yard uphill move in low mode with the G2? And I'm 23 years old, and I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah,
I just can't.
The physics of it
I just
don't
cannot
work.
do it.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, then why do we have a Steadicam here? And I'm like, that's a great question, because I was done with it at this point. I was like, I can't. You say to yourself, I couldn't do that now. I'm not any bigger, better, smarter. I just wouldn't do it now.
Yeah.
But they were like, we're gonna let you go. But in that same week, do you remember the old tube green screen, the Knights of the green screens that would be on like the Model 3?
Yeah, sure. It was the green monitor that we used to look at. Yeah.
Tube electronics. So that burns out on set. So this is totally their reason. They were already thinking about this. Now they're like, we're getting rid of you.
Okay.
So because my gear broke.
Yeah.
So
they have an excuse now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my gear is like literally like smoking on set.
Oh.
And I'm like, well, I'm out of here. So I drive my broken gear back down, and then we start getting into an insurance claim, which the insurance claim ends up being not happening. So I get stuck with the bill, and then I actually have the guy saying, the line producer's like, if you even chase this, I'll sue you for ruining. And I'm like 23 years old. What do I know?
That's
I got no.
Right there.
Who am I going to call? What am I going to do? Like I've got, I'm 23 years old. I got a bunch of lawyers in the background who are going to help me out in this. And he's like, I'll just sue you for all the time lost of the time it took to get another person. And I'm like, I'm done. Yeah. So I broken gear, no money, and they didn't pay me for like the last,
well, of course,
low budget.
No.
So I do that. I get fired from that job, and then I go home, and that was when it was like, I've got to figure this out. And that's when I changed over to a trans video and like swapped it and cut my whole thing. And then that's how I met like Terry West and Robert Loon. Like all of a sudden, everything of like meeting the right people came from literally, and I'll never forget it because my brother saved my ass. This is the only time my brother, like I can say truly just like without a doubt across the country, He had an A minima package, and he sent me a trans video.
What was
out.
an A minima?
An Aton A minima, because he was doing.
It was like that small camera.
Because he was doing table stuff as
a
a
film
DP.
camera.
Old film camera. And he's like, you know what? I bought this system to go with it, but I'll send you the monitor. And the second I swapped over, I took my old, now beat up Model 3, ripped out all the bottom, had Terry West did the work, and he did it for me for like, I think he was like, this kid's like on his deathbed as far as his career.
Yeah.
And he like totally hooked up and he wired it. And this is where my Steadicam literally became wire from battery to cable, wire from battery to top.
Yeah.
That's all you get. But it was from that point that I went from a green screen to like this 7-inch SD color. And from that point on, people would walk next to you because they could see. And the intimacy of millions. So I got like two major, like I thought my career was over. And I can honestly say, when it was something colored that people could walk with, like they see.
They saw you differently.
But the interaction was there. And it was dependability.
Oh,
and so
interesting.
the funniest things, there's like, you never know what's going to be like, my career's over. I'm moving home. I'm going to go tell my parents I failed.
Yeah.
Can I like work in the company? We don't have a company, but I'm going to work at the country store
100%.
again. It's like, it's over.
Yeah.
And it's like, those are the times and the moments where you're like, I had no idea. And luckily, I think about it now, it was like $1,300 monitor.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I feel like modern days now, people are like, oh, that's an easy monitor. But back then, that was a
big deal.
That was a big deal. And it was like, I that was probably being saved. That saved like, maybe it saved my whole career.
Wow.
Was getting screw trice and changing one tool.
For anybody who doesn't understand completely, because we're doing Steadicam speak, which my wife used to get upset at me for. Basically, what it was the Model 3 didn't really have a modular monitor. Like there was a monitor, but all the electronics were in another part and whatever. And at a certain point where standalone monitors, which are like people have them in their car now, started to come out, people were just like, oh, this is crazy, and they would just hack everything off and put a new monitor on there, and there'd just basically be one cable that made sense and it moved forward. But the old ones were green.
3-inch, like 4-inch by 4-inch.
Yeah, they were teeny, and they were green and black, I guess.
That's
or
it.
Green and white. No,
Yeah,
green and black.
and then they'd have some of them. The TB9 had like the white highlights.
Yeah, the white highlights.
Which
So
like,
basically,
whoa.
you were looking at a green, and the reason it was green was because you could see it outside. It was high contrast. But you were looking at a green image. So of course, no director ever wanted to look at that. Because they would look at a transmitted black, color.
Black and white,
black and white, or
black and white or color, maybe penning.
Yeah, but so suddenly it was like, oh wait, I can actually look at it and stand next to you and talk to you. So suddenly it's a whole different. It's interesting.
And it really and so
it probably happened with me too, but I don't really remember
because it was not because there was a time period where. Everyone, like, that's the fun thing about change is that you get, and I guess the further you get to be inside a business is you can see these different time periods. And, I'm sure you've gotten you've spent your whole career talking to different generations of different people.
Sure.
And you can see really how did you get here kind of question can stem back. But if this was 5 years earlier or 5 years later, that would never have existed.
Well, and I think also a lot of it, and this is just sort of human nature, is in retrospect, you can see it, but in the moment, you're going, I'm just making the best decision I can make for this moment and hoping that it's right and moving forward.
Way I can fix my
I mean, it wasn't you going, I'm going to go fix this because people will walk next to me and I'll have better interaction and whatever.
And I'll see better and my shots will get better. And I could adjust frame lines with ease.
I did a music video in Atlanta that I DP'd and did Steadicam on called. It was for a band called Y'all So Stupid, and it was called 95 South, which is the interchange that goes through there. And it was just there were these kids. It was actually great. But I shipped my gear out there, and when I got out there used to be this small tube inside. It wasn't the picture tube, but it was a small tube that like heated stuff up or something like that. And I found out after the fact that a lot of good Steadicam operators had a backup of that tube, but I did not. So it got out there, and my rig wouldn't turn on, and I go inside and look, and that tube had shattered or something like that. And a lot of guys I think used to take it out and pack it separately.
Yeah, because it could.
I didn't know, so I did this.
Things you never, but people will never have to deal with. I had
an old wireless illegal transmitter that transmitted to like channel 27 or something like that.
Yes.
And I did this Steadicam. Now, granted, it was a rap music video, so you just flipped it from side to side and it looked cool. But someone walked next to me with, I'm thinking like a 21-inch color TV. Like I'm talking like the wood grain
Yeah,
paneling,
holding that
RCA
with a
color
cable,
TV,
yeah.
with a cable plugged in and so on, and walk next to me, and I'm looking at it, and I'm
You're
framing
trying
it,
to figure out how to
and
say
that's how we did the music video
Yeah.
because I was transmitting to it. It's just like, you know, you just
That's
do what you
just,
do.
That was
It
just
is
how it...
It is what it is. But those were the days. In a weird way, look, I don't ever want to go back to
No,
those days. But there was something really nice and nostalgic about the simplicity and the stupidity of what we had. It was just like, just keep moving.
It was what... It's what make, because you don't realize it, but you're probably you're gonna do the same thing on every other job for the rest of your career.
It's true.
You're just gonna do it for a different reason,
And you're going to have better tools.
and better tools to
Yeah.
do almost the same thing. There'll be less chaos in
Yeah.
a certain way,
Yeah.
but not really.
Yep.
You're just refining that same thing because how often do you get on the set nowadays, like a big movie, and you've got this like, okay, it's the super complex shot. We got to put this thing, and the crane's gonna come down here, and then you find out it's just a boom down. Do you know what I
true.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, and you just like, well, we don't want to have the grips build like a a 6-tiered level platform to get this techno crane.
yeah.
You know, like everybody's throwing 50 years of the best filmmaking experience, and then you're
And
like,
it's just like, don't we just need to go from here to here?
yes, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's better.
That's right. And it's like, it's funny because everyone you're now standing in a room with, on these jobs later
Yeah.
has done the same thing
That's
you've been
absolutely
doing
right.
to a point where now it's just you're thinking it on either a much bigger scale or just larger time periods or just bigger things. But it was the same thing of how the hell do we make this work
Yeah.
with nothing in no time?
Which is the best way to do it because then you've always got that shorthand. But the thing is, the more I've done this, the more I realize that 99% of the time, the simpler way to do it, the simpler shot is the better shot. Is the more complex it is, it does not necessarily mean it's better.
I think technology in the last few years, and I feel like a culprit of this as well, is like we all are as well, and also victim of it at the same time because we see where it could, and we also enjoy it. But I mean, there's a lot of times where I think for operating nowadays, for being a faster, better operator, and there's some questions that I know that they're probably worth touching in at times, but a lot of them I think pertain to this idea that you had sent before, is that what is the difference between being an A camera operator, B camera operator, doing a good job, doing a bad job, understanding of what it is. A lot of it's just really simply is understanding the different ways you fucked up in the past with all these really silly ways of doing it. And now what's the fastest, most convenient, most enjoyable way to just do that for everybody right now?
Yeah.
And how can you help?
Yeah.
And that's kind of...
That's the way that right there in a nutshell. It's absolutely right. And how do I oversimplify this overcomplicated situation without, by the way, and this is a big part of it, without stomping on your ego or your ego,
with harming no soul.
And it's funny. I don't remember. I think I was talking to Guy B, and he was saying, and it was stuff that I've done too, and I just didn't think about it. You get these terms that you use all the time. You're like, what would happen if, or would you ever consider, and what you realize is like, God, we all do the same stupid crap.
We all do the same thing.
But it's just this way of going, okay, I think I know how to do this. I think I know how this can benefit the film and make it better. I now have to get it in there in a very softball way that someone else is probably going to think that it's their idea, and I'm totally okay with that because I just want to not have to stand on the edge of that cliff
exactly.
to get this shot.
And I don't want that person to have to do this much more work to do the same thing.
Yeah.
You're on a set, and maybe you're new to that set or new team or whatever, and you're like, well, what if we just set up the camera here and like I'm just offset on this side and it's a little harder, but then it makes that really easy for him.
Yeah.
And then they get a better angle there. And then the actor who we know is not going to hit their mark, we don't have to be rough with them. We give them a 3-foot window. Yeah. Everybody wins. And they're like, you're okay with that?
Yeah.
You're like, well, but it doesn't make your job better. And they're like, well, yeah, but I didn't want to ask.
They're not
and
used
you're
to
like,
that, though, yeah. If everybody's on that same page, it's heaven. There's no question. My dolly grip that I work with quite often, Steve Hubble, who's just the greatest. He's so good. It's scary. There are times when I'll just go, he'll go, well, let me get this in here and let me get this in. And I go, Steve, give me a sandbag. I want to put a sandbag on the floor. Well, you're going to put but what about that? No, just give me a sandbag. And he goes, okay, I'll give you a sandbag. And then he'll bring me a ferny pad and he goes, I know you don't want the ferny pad. You're using the ferny pad. I'm bringing you to
Yeah.
I was just like, I don't need the ferny pad.
But he's like, but it means nothing to me to bring it, and just in case. And then you realize that he's thinking the exact same thing that you're thinking. I don't want you to have to carry something, and he's thinking, I don't want to have to worry about carrying. Yeah, he's like, it's everybody's thinking for the same thing.
But that's the great thing, and the funny thing is, 9 times out of 10, he'll look at me and he'll go, yep. It was a sandbag. You're absolutely right. That's the way it should be. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that.
Because I always think I don't really have bad experiences at work. And I know I have bad experiences at work. It's just
please tell me how that happens.
No, I mean, I can tell you, like
we all do.
I won't say what it was, but yeah, we had one where it was like we flew a car out of a 9-story building.
That's
6 cameras, and you shoot it out. It's on tow line, and we all sat there as a team, like the whole team, like, so the car's gonna come out like at this pace, at this speed, with this, like we're pulling out measurements on the monitor. We're literally sitting there with the matchbox, like everybo's trying to be sure, and things just happen. And
did not go as planned.
And I've like, I don't feel like I missed a lot of shots, but I don't feel like I had a bad day. But I'm sure that was like probably one of the worst days I've ever had.
Because you missed the shot. Because it went somewhere else.
It was like 3, 2, 1, and then it was like nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And
so wait, don't we cut? And then it was like, and then so you're expecting it to shoot out, and then it didn't shoot out, and it puddled out, and then you whip down, and I whipped down because you're trying to follow a car flying out of a building. And I see that it didn't go, and I whip up just in time to catch it and come back down, but it wasn't perfect.
Yeah, I know.
And I was like, that's just.
But there's a story in that even because we've all been there, and not with a car specifically, but something like
not
that.
With something you can only do once.
Yeah, but not
locked up half the city for.
I've even been there with that, but it's one of those things where it's like. In that case, from what you told me, totally justified that you missed it, and you're still going to beat yourself up that you missed it because you're like, no, I should have had it.
I should have had it, even though none of that. But everybody, and there's I got to say, like, the people on it, like, manage the situation thing like just as mellow, just as good as everybody, and that's the thing because you're like. Yes, you're working with people who are great because they went through that same 30 years of dealing with the same shit, and they're all going to look at it and go, hey, we did the best we could. It's life. It happens. But it's that everyone tries to do it. Everyone circles through that. And that's the key of that seems to be, to me, like the thing that I feel like of how it's all come together is that one weird rhythm is like that's the string.
There's another thing that occurred to me that we were talking about, putting it in a sandbag and simpler and this and that and the other. And I think, I wonder what you think about this. There's something to being a younger operator where you sort of, you don't want to say, well, let's just put it on a sandbag because you want to be the guy who goes, you know what, I think we got to do, and it's like you almost, and I know I did this. It's like you almost feel like they're not getting their money's worth out of you if you just put it on a sandbag, and you feel like you've got to go. Well, but
what if we put it on this?
Let's put it on a piece of speed rail and do this or whatever. And it's just like no. And the thing is, when you're younger, the chances are the dolly group would be going, dude, just put it on a sandbag,
so we can all go home.
And so
we got the shot.
But a lot of that has to do with being comfortable with the shot is the shot,
and this is really
it's not about anything else.
You know what's weird about that is that's one of those things that you do go through that phase.
Yeah,
and you can't see it when you're going through it because it doesn't make sense. You kind of glimpse at it.
Yeah, unless it's pointed out to you.
Unless it's pointed out to you, but it's true. But then you really start getting to a point where you're like, I think in the last 10 years, and again, I say being a culprit and a victim of it as well. We all are. But like this, like, what's the coolest? What's the biggest? The most fantastical way of doing it?
Especially Steadicam. What's the longest?
Steadicam, the Trinity. It's the biggest, and it's like, and there is that world of it, and it is fun. It is fun to do fun things. We all like it, but it really is absolutely nothing to do with why you're going to be employed and what jobs you're going to be employed on in the end, because no one's going to be like, so we're waiting an extra 45 minutes because you had to put on the biggest, longest, stupidest damn tool to get the job done when every other person in the world would have just been like, you do this.
No, that's true.
And then you say to yourself, what is the point of trying to do all this if it's not? It's like, and I think there's an essence of doing that, but the reason the reason the director or DP is going to want to hire you again is because you're looking and managing that time, and you say, you know what, it would be awesome to get the little mini techno crane out here and set up all these things, and they're telling us we have 25 minutes to do it. We probably can get it done in 19, but I don't know. Or I could set up this really beautiful, simple thing that I know is going to work for him, and it's not going to change much. And I'll go up to him and say, I'm losing a foot on your top end, and I'm going to lose 6 inches on your bottom end. And I'm going to save you 30 minutes because I think the elegantness of this scene doesn't require me fucking your timetable to have some really wandangled. And that's what your director or DP are going to say. Thank you for not doing it. Because they know you said, if I do this, it's going to look cool.
Yeah.
But I tell you that 19 minutes is going to turn to 29, and
I can't control that.
And that's where you're just being honest to everybody's life.
That's an excellent. No, it's an excellent point. And look, to diffuse what you just said down to something even simpler to me is what you're saying is, I know you want to tell the story this way, and I can't guarantee you we can get it. Here's an idea of how I can tell this same story this way. And I think maybe it'll be even better, but I can guarantee you that we can get it. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And
what do you want? Exactly.
At the end of the day, you are going to get that next job because they're going to remember that and go, you know what?
We
didn't sacrifice the storytelling.
This or this.
Yeah.
He cared about the most important thing, and he said, what is more important to you?
Yeah.
And that's being the most honest, truthful of saying, I've done every possible choice we could make at this juncture, and the only thing I care about is your wishes and your wants.
Yep.
And then the other thing is, and this is where I think directors and DPs will really understand it, is we're thinking about all our stuff. There's actors who are about to do something that it could be very hard for them, or they're on their own timeline, or it's going to screw them up if you're like, okay, but now I need you to be 2 steps over here because in order to get this really cool thing, you also have to do this now. And it's like, is that really your character's going through a scene where maybe they don't need that in their head to really have that technical thing so you can have your heyday. So you and the boys at the park can be like, did you see the way we came up that crate?
Yeah, exactly. I can't wait till this gets on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. And
but again, it comes back down to it's the storytelling.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do with this. And one of the things that I have done before, and it took me a while. Like you said, look, I did ER, right? So ER was all about the huge shots and the walk and talks and this and that and the other. And I did the West Wing. Yeah, and it's huge shots and walkie talkies. So clearly my mind was there, and I was in this, easy. And it was just like, oh my god. And then at some point it became about like, you know, people would call me up and go, hey, we're doing this huge shot, and then I go, yeah, great. And there's an ego thing there, and there's a this and the other. And then at some point, what it becomes about is like, you know what? I think this is about the shot. Yeah. And if it's about the shot, I mean, to me, the worst thing in the world is if someone's watching something I've done. And they take their head out of the story because of something I did. Yeah. And if it's because the shot was so long, you know, it's Deacons, 1917, right? Yeah. I went to see 1917. I don't know. Everybody had a different feel about it. I went to see 1917 going, okay, I'm not going to enjoy this movie because I'm only going to be able to think about how they shot it, this and that and the other. And I went in there. And I don't remember exactly how it starts, but they go and they walk and they climb up and they get in the battlefield. And by the time he got in the battlefield, I never thought about the camera again. I was so involved in it.
It's funny too.
Some people
it's like
hated
almost
it,
at that exact spot.
It totally worked. Yeah, because I was like, oh, he's going to walk around there.
Now we're
that must be tough.
And then you go in and you're like, okay, we're in.
And then they're in there and there's and I was just like, I'm in. And I actually, so much so that I went back to see it again just so I could go, okay, how did they do this? How did they do that? Yeah. And I was like, that's
when the shot's good.
I didn't expect that in any way, shape, or form, and it was amazing to me. But
I find too the more it goes on, it's like the things that I find that I enjoy. Like I don't really even. I think now watching movies, it's like I just try not to see any of it as much as humanly possible.
Which is tough, right?
Which is tougher, but it's like if I see it, I don't like it. Yeah. I don't care how cool it is. I just don't care anymore.
Well, because
it's just not.
You want to be just taken away by the story.
I recently, I've got to give him a shout out because I actually think it was just amazing. But Extraction 2.
I got to tell you, I just watched Extraction 2.
It's like I know I'm about to see a 20. I mean, because I'd read the script for it. There was, I knew was good. I knew the script, so I knew what I was going to watch. Like I was like, shit, I've read this.
So people know who don't know this movie. It's it's not even an action movie. That's not even like
I don't know how to describe it.
It's just this non-stop thing. But there's a
28 minute long,
28 minute long
seemed giant piece, but it's so. it's so infused in
It doesn't
the
feel
rhythm
like
of the movie that you don't even know you're watching it.
You
Like,
don't.
you
And,
you don't
and,
pay
and on
attention.
top of which,
And
actually,
it's so intense.
you kind of don't have time to breathe. I mean, the
of
whole
course,
movie.
yeah, you can feel your heart rate going with
Yeah.
the experience you're having on
it's,
screen.
It's like nothing I'd ever seen.
And
it was insane.
And technically, you're like, I feel like I'm like I know, like, because we watch these things. You go, you know what it is, and you're just like, I don't even care. And that's doing complexity on like the best level, but for the only right reason.
Yeah.
And it feels to me, when mentally or how I emotionally associate it, is like I feel the rhythm of the movie. But as far as the technicality, as far as I'm concerned, it's still just a static shot, because in my mind and how I'm experiencing it,
Yeah.
it doesn't. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's simply
doesn't change
just
that. Yeah.
You're simply just experiencing it.
The
So
only thing that
who
frustrated
to
me
say?
about that movie is I wish that, and for the reasons that you're talking about, I wish they had released the movie. They had never said anything. And then a month after it came out, they went, "Oh, by the way, that was a 27-minute shot."
exactly.
Because I would have been like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah, because you watch it and you don't even. It's amazing how much when you are the operator of these like crazy things, and I've gotten to do some pretty advanced wonders and things and times, and it's like they are really stimulating fun. But when I think about like scenes that I personally had the most struggle with, or the ones that were like the most enjoyable, they're hard to do, are like none of those. Those are
They're not technically hard. They're
not technically hard. Maybe they are in little ways, but they're just more satisfaction. Like there's just more enjoyment having done it. And one was like, it was in Bardo, and it's a 4.5 minute dolly shot in a small room.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't even know we're on a dolly. We're on like a jib arm on a Connor 100 upside down.
Okay.
And I'm free. Like
You're
I guess
actually
I'm operating the
camera
head
off of-
upside
yeah.
down on a 4-foot offset on a small crane with my dolly grip, Joe Belshner,
And you're
a
on dance
8-foot
floor, so you're doing
platform,
some big.
and we're just
yeah.
moving behind a couch. Probably we only moved like 8 feet.
Yeah.
And it's every single part of that shot is just tied to how the characters, what the character. And remember, this is in Spanish, so you got me. I speak a little Spanish. You got another guy who doesn't speak Spanish,
But
and you have
not
the
enough
first
to
AC who
follow the
speaks a little
dialogue.
Spanish. So you are literally just responding to the emotion of every character's breath, and when they say the line and how they say the line, and it's this thing where we like pass through a head and we slam like. You're on a 17 millimeter.
I think I know the shot you're talking about now.
And she
actually,
walks
too,
away
I've
into
seen.
it, and it's like, if I were to say like some of my favorite shots I've done in my whole life, people
Right.
would expect like Big La La Land,
Yeah.
this, and it's like, no, that one. Sitting in a small corner trying to arc your body without interrupting that story and out showing the camera and out moving in this quiet, intimate 4.5 minute. It's a scene. It'll always exist. If you just take it out, it's still just a scene in a movie. It's still this emotion. That is way more fun and way more enjoyable than. And it's just because, and we look on that one. We spent a long time doing it because it was very dependent of the characters and the moment they're in, and you don't get that time anywhere. Like you don't always get to do that, but every shot and every scene and everything, even if it's just you doing an over, inherently might just then become later when you watch it. You're sitting there like in this weird corner in handheld trying to get this over because the director was like, no, we should block them in this really hard part to shoot in, even though it has no emotional content. So this very emotional scene, but we liked the way it looked.
Yeah.
You're like, great, I'm going to slam my ass in a corner and struggle to get this piece, and the character's moving, and all you're just trying to, and you get that one line, and it hits the light, and you're in this little thing, and you're like, and you know you got her or his performance. Perfect.
It's the best.
That's
There's
better.
nothing like that.
That's better than you're like, oh, sorry, I came off the helicopter and I jumped it. It's like you don't.
It's look. One of my favorite shots that I've ever done. People are always like thinking it'll be these massive this and that and the other, and those are fun to talk about. I mean, they're like
cool.
they're like kind of like carnival shots in a weird way.
Yeah.
I'm proud of them. Don't get me wrong. But I did a shot on, I think my first season on ER, and it was this woman. Who had lost her child, and Juliana Margulies, Nurse Hathaway, comes walking in a door and hands it to her in a rocking chair and says, "Take all the time you need." Her dead baby, who she's just lost, and then walks out the door. And all I did was I slowly followed her in on the Steadicam. I pivoted around as she gave her the kid, And as she walked past me, I pulled away as slow as I possibly could as this
Yeah,
woman
yeah.
started looking down. And it's one of my favorite shots. It's not even the
Exactly.
best operated shot
No, it doesn't
I've
matter.
ever done.
It's just,
but
you
it was
felt-
exactly right for telling the story. And that's those. I know what you mean. But those are those moments. And to me, those moments when you do a shot like that and you find yourself actually emotionally feeling something, you're like, okay, something happened here.
We did do something.
We did, yeah.
And I think every person because if you're thinking that way and feeling that way, and if this is something you can create, I always think it's like from your very first question, how do y'all get there? If you can find out how to do that in your career and all those bad times to still come up, like if it takes 100 tries and you get 1, all right, good. In 2 years you do another 100 tries and you get 3. Awesome. Then you're progressing and it's all going to turn out right. And then most of the time, those things are going to be those continual strands. Well, I haven't seen so-and-so in 9 years, or I haven't worked with them, or you walk into a thing and you see an actor who just like, that you did that short film I was in 12 years ago.
Right.
And I've had some of those moments where you're like, you those lines cross, and then you see that comfort and that feeling, and that's I think the only moment where you actually feel like you're like, all right, maybe I did a good job. Maybe after all said and done, these lines have attached, these things have been connected, these people feel this trust and comfort, and people feel safe and secure for you to be like, how can I, do this, and we can create this together, and then it.
And I know
works.
I
It's
know
weird.
that younger operators that I talk to will go, yeah, but you were doing ER and you were doing La La Land. Like, I don't have those opportunities. And what I always tell them is look, every shot you do has the opportunity to just be something unbelievable. Now there are things out of your control. Maybe the actor's no good, maybe whatever. But as long as you are doing
Trying to achieve
truthful
that
work
with
and
them,
trying to push for that,
you'll get something.
And you may get something, you may not, because there's a lot of pieces to that. But you're gonna make it better. The way I look at it is, my job is always to make it better than it was.
Yes, exactly.
I can't control all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is then when you do get that ER shot, you do get that La La Land shot, you do get that Bardo shot, you're set to just kill it because you know it. You've been doing it for so long, and now you're like, oh, and now everything's here, and now that's how I do it.
And now it just is that.
And I think that goes
way.
right back to what you were talking about like working on Sharknado.
Yeah,
and working
where
on
you're like,
that.
no script, 12
exactly
pages in a 6-hour day.
Yeah,
yeah. You're like,
so
all right. And that's it.
There are 9 people who will kill me if I don't ask you about La La Land.
Sure.
So that opening shot in La La Land, tell me, how do you as an operator prepare for something like that? How do you pull it off? I mean, that was insane.
You luckily, okay, at that time in life, luckily I was able to have the prep and the understanding to learn it, to know what we were doing way before. Nowadays,
you mean they brought you on?
Oh
early?
yeah. So I've had
a
2 or
treat
3
right there.
movies, 3 or 4 movies now. Actually, I shouldn't say a few movies now in time, which I'm very, very grateful, because it means the world to me, is to come in early and to actually have some very solid prep time. We might get a week or 2, and you kind of see some things that I was there 14 tech scout days, like 8 days of rehearsal, like the
Any
amount of
producers
days.
who are listening, this is how every project should happen, and you will save money and save time,
Well,
and it will be better.
Think about, just to parlay at the time, look at the director of John Wick, and what he recently had an interview, and he's talking about how he's able to accomplish what it is. And he said, we stopped doing the normal system, being told what it is and how to do it. We prep the way we need. And when you prep the way you need, you can do whatever you want. You can shoot. You can.
I guarantee you, Extraction 2 was the same way.
Same way.
They didn't show up and put
no,
that
they didn't.
together.
We're like, well, we think it's going to work.
Yeah.
No, same thing. And they execute what they want because they put the time and energy to know what they want.
Yeah.
So that one was lucky. I got to have ample time, and I've got all these videos of us out with phones doing it on a
nice.
in a parking lot, learning everything. Then we also had a week where we came in and did a dry run for 2 days. So the fun thing about that was, it was like easy days. Now, I'm sure everyone else on like the set might not say it was an easy day.
Yeah.
But when you think about what the logistics are, that's not an easy day. But I'm sure there was a lot of people who are like, we're going in and we're going to move 120 cars, lock them up on a highway, bring 100 extras, bring 500 background, bring a moving techno crane on a vehicle
cool.
that's going to you're going to wake up at 3 a.m. to get out there, to be ready for sunrise, to do it's a lot. It was like an easy day. And I know that sounds insane.
You're saying the days that
the one we shot was like an easy day
because it was just like we know this is the back of our hand, and now it's just doing
it. And now we just get to have fun and do it.
How many times did you do it?
I mean, we probably did each shot. We probably did 10, 15 times because you would always take the most amount of time you had. So if you said you had 6 hours to do a shot, but you got 20 takes in 3 hours, you still shot.
Yeah,
you could because you can and you should always get more if you have the freedom. But we had that freedom because we'd spent so much time getting out there, knowing what we were gonna do.
Yeah.
Now the harder things with those shots was, and this is more modern times make this easier, but I'm sure you've had this where you have different speeds you need on a wheels throughout the same shot. So what it is you're going to need to adjust the way the amount of I guess sensitivity on your remote wheels for different moments in the shot. So if you pan a little, it goes really far, or if you pan a lot and it doesn't go far at all.
And so what Ari's talking about are the wheels on the remote head that you use to pan and tilt. And sometimes you want very, very like finite skills, and then sometimes you want to be able to turn it and it'll whip.
Exactly.
But that's always a problem because you want to find some shots. This shot
you
obviously
might have
wasn't
both,
it.
and you might have to. So that was actually the only hard thing. And Linus and I, we all say it was Damien, me, and Linus, and Peter Cohn. We sat in the cockpit with George and Bogdan, who were operating the crane. George focus puller.
Yep.
And Alan driving. And so you're in this small little confined thing. So we were all by the console. And we worked it together. He would do a slight roll adjustment because we're on a curved bank throughout the entire thing, and he would help me with my speed adjustment. We just sat in a car in hot weather and just did a really hard shot. Like it's
great.
One thing. I mean, I did it. I had done it with my phone with Damien's phone for like weeks. With Linus, we'd gone through everything. We'd measured. Okay. We're running this fast to the tempo of the song through this cars. Now, okay, what if we have a 100-pound rig on? Okay, now what if it's 100 degrees?
Yeah.
Well, I think if we do this, we should move this car 1 foot more forward just in case because the biker has to get... So by the time we even got to the highway, all of those details that you'd figured out in that like stumble through were long. Like we had already solved them.
So you're 95%.
We were 95% before you even showed up.
That's amazing.
That's
the way it should
why
be.
That's why it's like that shot was like the easy. Honestly, when I think about it, it's funny because it's the opening movie and it just starts you off as like holy shit,
crap.
And it like does not. That was like not a hard shot.
That's
for me.
amazing.
The hardest shot of that movie is actually the smallest footprint one, which is when they're both dancing. It's actually the one that you see like where they're both dancing at Griffith, like up by Griffith Observatory.
Is it the one where the crane comes up really high and then comes back down?
Like like that. And the reason why that one's harder is because we did not have the rehearsal time that we wanted. We had some, but not as much.
I got you.
Lyrics changed in small details, and then it came down to the one thing that you just sometimes don't get to control, the sun.
Yeah.
We had 5 takes a day. The first and the fifth you can't use, under and overexposed. You had 3 takes a day. So you spend your entire day rehearsing for about 15 minutes of available light.
So wait, I can understand why you would do the first take, because it's basically a rehearsal. Why would you do the 5th take?
Case. Just in case.
Okay.
Also, it gives you also run like this is the other thing too is you run it on error chance. So it's like if you do one to like you don't know what your last one's going to be. This is one of those things. You know how you're always on those you're on a big oneer and everyone like doesn't want to say it's the last one because then everyone gets tense and then they fuck it up and it's like people have feelings and you have to sometimes you have to this. So you never want to say like we're not going to use the 5th one.
Yep.
You just know you're not going to use the 5th one.
Yeah, it's a mental game.
But that was like that
amazing.
was
it's an incredible shot.
It's an incredible shot, but it's not nearly the skill or like craziness of whip pans and moves and ups and downs. But what it was how much we had time we were prepped.
Yep.
The chance of success versus chance of failure, and then the responsibility of having all of that. Now, when you add like a little thing, even just a little thing of lyrics and timing changing, that means like when we rehearsed with our stand-in dancers, 1 step difference between the main is you with 3 takes knowing again. And I know this was the hardest one because at the end that weekend I went to go get I would get a massage every weekend on that movie because I was so hurt. Which the studio they were comfortable. They were like, we'll assist.
That's
in
great.
That. Because they knew they were like, we're killing you. They would let me one Friday it was a Thursday or Wednesday coming in. They were like, you should go home a little early and get a massage. We set it up for you. So
that's
we knew,
amazing.
Like that's people who cared.
That's people who care.
Prepped and knew.
And by the way, and I don't say this selfishly from their point of view, but are also going, we need to keep him going.
He's been
We
there
need
through
him.
the whole
Yeah.
rehearsals.
Yeah.
If we brought in another guy, they might be able to do the shot, but they didn't spend the weeks timing it out with
Exactly.
all of our actors.
Yeah.
But we go in and all I had to do is he goes from sitting to jumping.
Yeah.
And that tilt up
Oh, yeah.
is like you move that wheel a millimeter more, you cut a thing, and you're going to be there another day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you just spent.
No,
you just
absolutely.
committed to just
And
losing
that's
$1 million.
That's a tough shot.
Yeah,
too.
and
I mean,
and my masseuse goes. He tells me the week. He goes, "What did you do this week? Every muscle." He goes, "Every muscle in your shoulder blades in your arm is like tense and swollen and screwed up."
Yeah.
He goes, "You've never looked like this."
Wow.
And that's after doing all those big runs and 100. Because that's the shot that looked like you had hurt yourself.
Yeah.
And
wow.
it was just because you know. So that's kind of I guess the thing, like that's how you do hard shot is you hopefully have timing. Then, but I honestly, this is what's scary to me now as an operator and thinking forward is I don't know if the rehearsal time matters anymore. And that's
What do you
a
mean?
weird thought because I think I've come to a point where if you don't give me the rehearsal time, I should still be able to give you the same output.
Okay.
That's a
Interesting.
very hard concept for me to now try to push myself to.
Yeah.
Because I've figured out that if you bring me in tomorrow on a shot that I have no idea what, but an hour and a half to we're like shooting and I've got to get you that oneer that you just told me about, that means I have an hour and a half to go through and do everything I know to make that happen. And I know that after all these years of experience, I put my time and energy
I
to
see what
how
you're
to
saying.
communicate with everyone so that if you give me that bomb tomorrow, I should be able to perform that way. And not because I want to, but my clients, the way I look at it is I don't get to choose who they are.
Yeah.
I don't get to choose what their wants are. I don't get to choose their needs either.
Yeah.
And what we've learned in our business now is there's a lot. We want a lot more. They want a lot more from a lot less.
Sure.
So how do you get to a point where if someone comes in and says, well, we do a walkthrough, we know our actors are going to change their marks, we know they're going to change their blocking, they might even change their dialogue.
And maybe nothing like
And
this.
maybe nothing like this. But you have about 2.5 hours when they return to makeup to make sure that any adjustment happens, you won't have any error, and you need to plan and block 4 or 5 different things, know where every background's going to be and do it. And you say to yourself, that's not hard. That's what you signed up for.
Well, actually, that's what most of us do because
That's our job.
Most of us don't get the prep that you.
That's
The only thing
reality.
that I will disagree with you is if, and this is frustrating for me, is I will get called in, to do some big shot, or I'll be on a show where some big shot that they haven't told me about ahead of time, and I'll come in and it'll be like, okay, so you're going to step off the crane, and it's like, well, that crane? No, that's the wrong crane.
Yeah,
I mean,
I can't use that.
Or well, why is the base over there? Those are the things that I need more time to look
figure
into
out,
ahead of time because it's the stuff that has nothing to do with me. If it's just me,
I got you.
I can figure that out.
But that's the thing. That's the problem is we have been now. We know that we've not been forced because that makes it sound negative, but we've been crafted enough,
trained,
tailored enough
yeah.
to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing about modern filmmaking is that we now through all those years, but now the tools and technology is like we can be like, okay, well, let me figure that out.
Well, and
it's
also gives
cooler.
you gives you the ability to really sort of pivot on the fly into something much cooler that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Exactly.
There's no question.
And get them. And so that's what you get is they go, well, we wanted to do this and there. And then that's where it's like, yeah, I took a foot off here.
Yeah.
But I got you all this.
Yeah.
And whatever happens over there, you're going to get this. And if we have to wrap in 30 minutes, you're going to have one hell of a shot right now.
Exactly
and
right.
the whole team's ready and everybody knows and we're all in agreement. And it's like, it's not that it's going to succeed or happen. It's just learning that there's this new way of being where being an experienced operator is understanding whatever they're going to throw at you whenever, and how do you help? How do you make that the best you can? How do you implement it? And that's that new thing that I'm toying with. I'm like, because then I'm asking myself, okay, so how do I communicate to the 4 PAs that are going to help me cross all these times? Like, how do I say it in their terms faster to get them?
Yeah.
And how do I get them to want to move as fast as I need to move right now before the director is yelling at me and the AD's like, why are you not doing it? You're like, well, because I got to move 40 background.
Yeah.
And when they go, oh, you're working with my AD to work 40 background, and you're like, yes. And then you're like, hold on. Hey, so-and-so, I know you're putting that light there and the gaffer that. Do you want me to and you're speeding through all this as fast as you may possible. And
it's like plates in the air and
yeah, and you're
plates
just like,
on the
and
thing,
it's like,
you're
and it's
trying
like,
to keep
well,
them all
that's,
up in the
but
air.
then everyone's like, and then you work with like other operators, like, how does that work? And you're like, that's what we do. That's probably what happens when you get stuck doing really complex, crazy shit. Is the expectancy is you should be able to communicate with 60 people as fast as humanly possible.
But I think it's all, and also it's like, I mean, I said it before, but it's like swinging with two bats. It's like I came off of VR and I'd go on to other things. They go, we got this really complicated shot, and they'd show it to me, and I didn't want to say it out loud, but I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, sure.
we could do that. And then it's like, I would just instinctively, because it's a muscle and you just do it over and over and over again. And when so then what you're able to do, which is I think is sort of what you're saying, maybe where you're at right now, is you're able to go, okay, the really hard 75% of the shot that it used to be hard isn't really hard to me anymore because I've been doing it so much. I'm used to that. So now what I'm doing is I'm crafting the 25%.
Yes.
And I'm just bringing that up to that level. And it's not about I'm so great or whatever.
No,
it's just if you're just doing stuff over and over and over again, you get used to it. It becomes normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you first started Steadicam. You were like, you put it on and you were like,
walking's hard.
this is horrible.
Yeah.
And then you were like, oh, I can walk, and now I can walk backwards, and now I can, and
now you can do like 1 foot moves off a wall.
Yeah,
like
and you
it's
don't think
parkour.
about it.
You don't even think about it.
You don't think about it anymore.
But
so you just get used to it.
It's those things, and then I think it's like. I usually it's like it's like if you're batting with two bats, you always start there and you're like, okay, I see what we're swinging. Now I can hit with one.
Now I can hit with one.
Now
That's
I can do that, and
exactly
it's
right.
it's really like it's just shaping that tree, like cutting it all down, like pruning it faster and faster and faster and quicker. And I think that's what the entire career really feels like you learn from the beginning to end is like how does it get from point A to point B? Is you just sharpen that tool that you've broken, that you've messed up, and then you just get. It gets to a point where you just get simpler with these things.
And I think another part of it is, and I've been doing this for 33 years. You've been doing this for what 20 years
now, yeah.
I think you reinvent what you do and what you are and what keeps you interested.
Yeah, exactly.
It used to be like, oh, these massive shots. Now, to be perfectly honest, the smaller and more simple the shot I can be that nobody even knows it's happening.
Yes.
But then suddenly it's like, how did we get in here?
Yeah.
That's more interesting to me. Maybe it's because I'm older and I don't
No,
really want to
same
lug
way.
the rig
Same way.
around.
No, same way. But
it's much more interesting
because
to me.
because you know that the first intent was because the first intent should always be off the feeling.
Yeah.
Right. Like off that.
Absolutely.
And so you know what you're hearing, but you I guess it's like I always feel like there's a little bit of that psychic language that you kind of. Like as an operator that you have to interpret from mom and dad being the director and the DP, but also you have the guy in the room upstairs watching the floor being like, are they moving? You have all that stuff to juggle. And it's like you do become a little bit more cyclic because you do kind of like understand that you're like, I know the DP wants X, Y, and Z, and I know that's going to take 10 minutes, but I know this thing. It's like you're just trying to figure out how you can be like, I'm going to get you exactly that in 8.5 minutes.
But I'm also going to give you
But
this.
I'm also going to, but if I
that.
do it this way, and I know it's a little different what you guys said, but it's going to make sure that if the director changes his mind or her mind about any single thing, that we're not going to sacrifice what we wanted, and we'll be able to give it to him better.
Yep.
And it's like that gets it's just so much more enjoyable to not. Like I always find too when you do, I'm sure it's the same way for you. Is like when you do a big shot now, you're just looking at everyone's looking at like, oh my God, it's such a big shot, and you're like, yeah, but do you really feel like that one moment when they moved, that I moved?
No, believe
did
me.
that, and they're like,
Yeah.
what the fuck are you talking about? You're like, never mind.
You just like literally ran up a hill, went down a staircase, jumped over an elevator, and I'm like, yeah, but the lock off at
But
the
that
end.
it's like the
Yeah.
character stopped, and then I kind of did it, and
Exactly.
it worked because of the line, and they're like. Nobody
Go
on the
away.
planet
Nobody's
is going
ever
to
gonna
understand
see
that.
It's just-
And that's that thing where you look at it.
But that's what
and
I think makes operators good.
Yeah, is because it's understanding that you're not just focused. I mean, I think there's also a trained eye of understanding that, like when you're a camera that walks and moves through a room and goes and explores places, that you have to understand like a natural feeling of what it would be like to be your character in these places.
Sure.
And so we do a lot of that. So we get to like. We know when we walk into a room and you're like, wow, the way you came in and you showed off that space. And you're like, yeah, no, we do that. That's what we do. But it was the way your eyes subtly came from this to that one person when
It's
you picked up
nuance.
your idea. It's the nuances that to me just I don't think well, let me ask you this. Do you think, because I wonder this too, Did I notice them earlier? And if I did notice them when I was really early, how did I react to those? Did that help me get to where I am in the sense
You mean
of,
the nuances?
Yeah, like back in the day, before I could pick up on them, was it just this internal language? And if I was picking on them, is that why I am where I am today? Or is that something that I learned along the way? I never know.
Chicken or the egg kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I really don't know
my
sometimes.
My suspicion is that when you're first, I mean, I think as an operator, you go through all sorts of levels, assuming you're good and you keep and
You
and I
progress
will say
yourself.
this: I'm still learning.
Yeah,
mean,
I know. I'm like-
it's just the amount that I'm learning gets less and less, and it's more finite and it's more specific. But I'm still
But
learning
it's like
on every
day
job.
still. Yeah.
And the day that I got to get out. But I think at first you're just like, I just don't want to screw this up. I just want to turn the wheel the right way to make it tilt up. And if I could just do
If
that.
I get that
so I
far-
think at that point you're like, nuance. I don't even know what that
If I
word
even
is.
caught 'em.
And then
Yeah.
and then you're sort of like, okay, I totally know that I'm going to tilt up, but now I'm going to work on like the way that I tilt up and
Yeah.
the timing of the tilt up. And then when you're ready to do that, you're like, okay, I can totally stand this guy up from the chair. And now I want to actually let him jump me just a little bit because I want the camera to psychologically have to pick up
Exactly,
with him. And
yeah.
so I think what it is you take away those layers of fear. Actually.
Yeah,
I mean, really
yeah,
what it
you
is.
reduce
and
them.
then suddenly you're able to see that
Yeah.
really cool stuff that's underneath, which is the stuff that's like the gravy of all this, which is the storytelling.
Yeah, it's these like little things, and it's funny because my last film, which was a lot more like 2-3 cameras working, shooting intimacy, which I don't always get to do, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Where it's just characters. There's no, no big helicopter, none of that shit. And it was really nice, and I think the feedback I got from my other operators, because I always like to think is like I might just be like the A camera guy, and yes, the director and DP might talk to me first, but we're all the same here. I'm gonna try to think for all three of us at the same time. And that's just what the A guy might do here. But they would all be like, wow, you just constantly set us up to be in places where you're like, this is the most sensitive thing. So screw my A camera getting over here. I don't care about that over there. This piece right here, this C camera, that one line.
You get that
moment.
Yeah.
It's the glorious bit of everything.
And so, but you as an A camera operator don't have a problem with the fact that the C camera operator is getting the best moment.
No. Because as long as I am working with them to do it, we're all because then I'm helping the camera lead into that moment.
Yeah.
And then the B camera's getting the setup for that moment. And then C camera's getting it. And so then you get into this sensation where it's like all is working together and it's all seeming. And then that becomes just so much more. You get to have more of those moments because then you go run back to the monitor and you're like, because you do what the directors try to do, or like multicam directors, they try to watch like 3, 4, 5 cameras at once,
Exactly.
and you're like,
it's like ping pong.
it's not so easy.
Yeah.
But it is in certain ways because you watch a scene unfold right from start to finish. So you watch as it comes in on the A.
Well, you
and
sort
they
of watch
move
the
and-
cut. Almost,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And then you just start seeing, and so you start highlighting, and then you get to really enjoy just because there's no fear of, well, we didn't get this moment. This isn't going to work. That's not going to fit. This doesn't you've already done all that.
Yeah.
And so you just get to sit there and enjoy being like, okay, now watch. Okay, watch them come in. Okay, we got that cut. All right, now we're here. Like you can just enjoy the moments faster and more enjoyable. You can just actually, you're almost live streaming the movie you're making in your mind as well as for everyone there. So you just get to capitalize on more of the good shit.
No, I get what you're saying, and I call it. I'm not the only person. I'm sure other people do, but I think of it as psychological framing.
Yes,
and that's what I've sort of gotten into in this latter part of my career or whatever. Is it's not about the move and the this and the that and the other. It's just about, there's an actor in there who's telling the story, and there's lighting in there that's telling the story, and how does the camera tell the story? And it's so much about the frame, and it's so much about moving the frame, and it's so much about not moving the frame.
Oh yeah, it's like
when to move the frame and why you're moving the frame.
The difference of like, man, I really feel like if I'm right here, I'm not motivating this.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm trying to see something, but I should be seeing this. Well, what if I just came 6 inches to the left? And everyone on set is like, is he still tooling around?
Why is he messing
they're still
around
like
with that?
they're doing makeup. They're calling last looks, and you're like, no. This is.
There's
and then
something
you
better.
You settle on this half inch, and the dolly grip gives you that like nod of approval, like, sure, dude.
Yeah.
And then you watch it in your mind, you're like, that's what I wanted it to feel like.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. I guess there's no there'll never be an interpretation of what that is. You just know over like years and years of years that's what you were supposed to do
It's
that
exactly
day.
right. Well, on the flip side of it, and I do this a lot with extras, is an AD, second AD will come over and go, hey, when you coming through the doorway, was that cross okay? And I'll think about it for a minute, and I'll go, yeah. And the reason I'm saying yeah is because I can't remember the cross.
Yeah.
If I can't remember the cross, it means it was perfect.
Yes, exactly.
If it bumps, and so it's the flip side. It's like sometimes you just go, it's here, and you look at it, and it just I can't tell you why, but that's where the camera.
That's
needs
where
to
it
be.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then you're picking up all the subtlety things. You're like, well, the actor kind of shifts because of that. So then I kind of naturally shift, and this makes that kind of like, and you start looking through. That was that. Like I feel like too. It's like you work with some directors who, along your way, is like you'll work with that one director who's like, I hate in movies when this happens, and so you suddenly this now sticks out in your brain. You'll like, what are the headrest?
Yeah.
Headrest in movies. A lot of operators have a. I'm sure if you could probably do like a poll of like headrest and how everybody
Headrest
feels.
in a car you're talking
Oh
about.
yeah, in a car. Because in some scenes people will freak out about this, and sometimes people never pay attention. Even in the same movie, you could have the same fucking car in a movie with headrests in one scene and not in the other. 99% of the people see it, but you'll get that one director who's like, will be like, we have to reshoot the whole movie.
Yeah, we got to restart from day
that
one
like this.
or
Like
whatever.
I'm off the project.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
and
funny.
you're like,
Do you know Don Devine? Don Devine's the operator. He's a great operator, but he's the operator on Barry. I don't know if you watch Barry, but it's He's unbelievable.
Yep.
It's unbelievable, and just Barry, especially season 4, is like a masterclass in filmmaking. It's just incredible. But he and I were talking about it, and I'm the same way. It's like people will go like, why the tree's growing out of her shoulder, and it's like she's giving this soliloquy about it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't. What are you talking about? The trees growing. I just don't get caught up on stuff like that.
Sometimes
and there's some
I do,
DPs,
sometimes I don't.
There's another thing where occasionally it goes like, God, all I can see is the tree, and you're like, why am I paying attention to that?
Yeah.
But in some DPs will go, doesn't that bother you? And I'm like, no, look at what this person is doing.
Exactly.
And maybe that's good, and maybe that's bad. I don't know. But
it's just like you have to like. But it's like if you then say to yourself, you're like, okay. Like sometimes it's always with lamps, you always get the
with lamps. Lamps is a
oh
better.
God,
Yeah.
you're like where am I going to cut
lampshade coming
this?
out of the head, or
and
whatever.
then you just sit there and you get that stare-itis because you're like, well, if I move it to the left,
Yeah.
Well, what if it goes up? And you get that, and then you're
what if we raise the whole stage?
Exactly. You're like, well, what? And like, your brain starts just going into this. You're like, okay, and now you start examining. Okay, well, the lamp is from 1984, but the movie said in 19. You've gone
I'll
through
tell you,
that
that's where
whole
I don't know
thing.
if you do this, but that's where I turn to the dolly grip and I go, okay, the lamp behind
Yes.
it, yeah, is that driving you nuts? What are you talking about? Okay,
Never
so
mind.
I'm
Exactly.
obsessing,
and that's exactly. And then you do that because you're measuring so much of the value of what, at like little things and little shapes. But then there's times where you're like you won't even notice it, and someone will be like, "Do you know there was a trash can behind your character, the whole frame?" And you're like, "Couldn't have seen it."
Oh, and
literally that big trash can right behind the actors that never saw it.
And one of
How'd
the
you
things
not
that
see
I
it?
come back to is
Can't
like if
see
you
it.
think of your favorite movies and you think of your favorite scenes and your favorite moments in acting, I couldn't tell you what was behind them or if something
Unless
was
it was
coming out
like-
of their head or not. Because the thing is, what they're doing is so powerful
That it wouldn't
it's-
make a
It
difference.
doesn't make a difference. I mean, you don't want it. Granted, it's do your best
But
to
you,
get rid
but
of it.
you,
but
you find all those things. It's like, but then you find yourself, and I think this is what gets fun with it too. Is why it's like I never feel like I know anything because it's always changing. It's like it's that thing. You're always learning. Is like you'll then watch while you're sitting in maybe you're working with like, you're doing a movie and this is like kind of a weaker piece, or like this line is like total exposition. You're like, okay, this
isn't in the movie.
Yeah, like and then you say to yourself, you're like, okay, but maybe this is some characters, like maybe they like this, or maybe this is this person's one line, or so whatever.
Yep.
You're just looking at it in the bigger picture, and you're like, okay, if I put this person right here in this way in this thing, it's kind of a dead shot for sure. But if I craft a way to like maybe I just put the 3-foot slider on, and because that character is walking and I just move into this person this way, maybe this makes this feel real. Maybe this is now not just exposition and could serve a purpose.
How do I take nothing and turn
How
it
do I
into
take
something?
nothing? And it's like you get to have that thrill of looking at how, little details like that. And I always say it's like you don't always get to decide when to push in or when to not. But I've had a lot of people in time tell me, and I don't like sliders a lot, but I think because they're so powerful, it's such an emotional tool that you're like, you have to be very sensitive to when you're doing it. But it's like, I always think about the subtlety of just moving with a close-up. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. And you make so much suggestion on whether you chase the frame chases you. Do you go with the eyes? Do you go with the head? Do you go with the
framing.
Like all of that is
Yeah.
like you actually have to ask yourself with every time when you take the responsibility of like shooting a portrait like that, you ask yourself those mental things like, who is this character? What would they be?
What's the story?
What is going on?
Yeah.
It's funny how that always becomes the most. So that's what I mean. It's like, yeah, sometimes I have no idea if there's a giant light pole sticking up or there's an eye running through, like a line in the background through eyes. Because
there's something. And there are times where people will come in and be like, doesn't that bother you? And it will bother me once they've pointed it out. But I didn't even see
Never
it.
noticed it.
And
But then,
since you mentioned sliders, I'm just going to throw this out there so everybody hears it. Sliders don't have to slide.
Yes.
You don't have to move the camera because you have a slider. If you have a slider on and you need it, use it. But there's a special, like, when other operators put a slider on and they're just like, why are you moving? Well, because I mean it's a kind of a I just because you can doesn't mean you should. The question is why are you moving?
Yeah,
not
it's like
can you move?
I love having a slider on if I look at a line and I'm like, I would like to push on that one line. I'm going to push
Gives
1
you
inch.
the ability. Yeah.
1 inch.
Yeah.
Like you will never
Imperceptible.
So the funny thing is I have like a few things that like, directors and phrases that would always stick with you and everyone does. And one of them is Alejandro Inarritu, and his whole idea is like, I want the whole movie to be imperceptible.
Yeah.
Until it is. And like when you're doing big movies, because like the feeling is imperceptible.
But that's Bardo. That's a lot of
that
Bardo.
is so much of it. But I always think of that word as like that word.
Imperceptible.
Imperceptible, because I think almost every time I'm happy with my product of like the shot I've done, even if it's a big moving shot, it's imperceptible.
That's the reason.
It really is everything.
I've said this many times before. It's on the website. But the guy who trained me, Bob Crone, Steadicam operator, he was in his 60s when he trained me, and I've never seen anybody move like that in my life. It was unbelievable. And at the end of the course, he sat us down and he said, I'm going to talk to you about the business of Steadicam. And, I remember he said, you're going to have to get a fax machine because that's how businesses are done now.
yeah.
But he said at one point, he said, the irony of what we do is if we do it well, nobody knows we ever did it.
Yeah.
And I have tried to, I haven't often hit that, but that's what I've always tried to do is like even huge moves.
Oh yeah.
If you're thinking about my move, I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun because it's just as hard in doing in the big moves and just as hard as doing in the small moves, but it's the same rule of thumb.
Yeah.
It's that imperceptibility. Don't know that I did my job. Don't know that I was ever there. Don't know, like, I'll put a 4-foot on slider on and just put it on and just wait.
Yeah.
Wait. And then it's right at the end of the shot and you're like, I was waiting for the edit.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that moment when I know that I already saw 2 takes. I know what the actor is going to do.
Yep.
Right when he does that thing and you know that actor's giving you the, here's where you cut, boys. And that's the one time. And you probably look like the dolly grip, the key grip, everyone's like, why did we just wait a minute and a half for him to put on a slider? And then you get that for him and they're like, That's it.
why.
That's exactly it.
Yep.
You're like, it was not about the movement. It was the anti-movement.
And then the other thing that I'll say is, because I'm talking
psychological.
about this, I mean, it sort of sounds like we know what works and we don't. My thing is also like, I'll fail 40, 60, 80.
Oh.
But to me, it's like to take those chances, to get those moments. That's the cool stuff.
That's why you hired me,
Yeah.
to maybe get you that
Yeah.
or fail. It's like, I'll either die getting you the best.
That's exactly
or,
right.
or that's it.
But that's the thing is, and I think that's what
That's that
happens
trust.
is we
Yeah.
we were talking about, like, at the beginning you just want to tilt up, and then you're like want to tilt up faster and whatever. But at the point where you're like, you know what, I'm comfortable and then I know what I can do. You can go, I'm going to hang out on that edge where all the good stuff
that's
is.
why I
and
was
sometimes
brought
we're
here.
going to fall off the edge.
Yes. And
But-
then you walk back and you go,
but it's worth
I fell
it.
off the edge.
Yeah.
It won't happen again.
But it's
I'm
worth
sorry.
it for the times that you don't and you stick the landing.
Half the times I feel like when that happens too, and maybe not all the directors that it happens to or DPs have to do. Some will be like, fuck you just ruined my take or my shot. But some of them will totally see what you
What
were
you're
going
going for.
And if you and the director or you and the DP felt that way, you probably just made a connection that's going to mean something together.
That's exactly
and
right.
that's probably going to be the job that mattered most out of it. That failure in that moment, I always thought there was something you almost like, When you've done live, and we've all done live stuff. It's like, you would always hear a good TD being like a technical director who'd be the ones who's telling you what shot's going to. And,
camera 25, get ready. Camera 26, get ready. Yeah.
So you would hear them offbeat saying, I really like what you're going for, number 14. I'm digging that. Give me a minute.
Yeah.
Because you knew that was basically two people creating a connection of communication, saying, I know what you're going for. You know what I like.
Yeah.
And we don't always get to do that in sets because it's a different moment, but it does happen. And sometimes, don't blow it on the first one. I guess for anyone listening who's a new operator, don't just take that as a liberty to blow the first take.
Yeah, don't blow the first take.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
But you also have to risk that as an operator.
Well, and you have to have their trust. You got to get their trust first, and then you can push.
And sometimes asking about that before you're doing it might be the way to start the trust.
Yeah.
And then let it ride. You might say, I'm feeling like this at the end. What do you think?
Yeah.
And they're like, no. And you're like, great. But that helped already. That just established.
And also, they know you're thinking ahead.
They know you're thinking ahead, and now they're interested. And then you go, why don't I do this on this one? And they're like, go for it. And they're like, okay, I see. Or they don't. And like you create such a new path line. But I really think it's hard to describe how you get to be able to do those failures, because I feel like if two random people got hired, and one of them has, because someone asked me this a while ago, how do I say the same things that you say and it doesn't get done the same way? And I really thought about that, and I'm that's a hard thing.
Well, but also part of that is it's your Ari Robbins, La La Land, Bardo, and this and that, and you can't replicate that. And other people are like, well, that's not fair, and it's just like, well, it isn't, but it just is what it is.
It is, but I can tell you how that gets to be a thing. And I said, because if you come in and you're caring and you're interested in the same way and you have that kind of love for it, and there's nothing that you're trying to, you're not coming in that way, they may trust you more that you're coming from that way, but that was gained.
Yeah, and also
that was gained through those ways.
In that same thing, they may question you because, well, you've only got 2 years experience, so I'm not going to go everything you're saying is gold. But I think what it comes down to is if you're passionate about it and you go, and I just want to make what I want to give you what you want, and I want to make it even better, without changing it. I think people realize that. Good people realize that.
Good people will stick to that, and that to me has always been the most. I feel like that's been that thing that I don't know if I do it, and I don't know if I do it right, but I know it's stuck out to me. That's helped along the way. Yeah. And I always feel like, how would you quantify it to people? Like, how do you tangibly tell people how to do it? It's like, I don't know, but I always feel like if you're like guts onto something after a shot, like if you're like, well, that's pretty cool, but wouldn't be this, like, measure your crowd. Maybe first try your dolly grip.
Yeah.
Maybe first try your first AC.
What'd you think?
Did you like that?
Yeah.
Or like, what do you think? Would that be cool? And then maybe do that, because if you do that, and I've been trying to train myself to always do similar things too, is because it's like, if you say to your AC on your open walkie with your DP, like, I don't know, man, what do you think if we did like a 2-foot push-in at the end? Your DP might hear that, and he might be like, I think that's pretty cool. Now your focus player has a chance to get focus marks.
Yeah.
Now your dolly grip's getting prepared, and then you can walk over to the director and be like, hey, we
got
were
an
all
idea.
kind of digging this, but I was feeling it on this line. I think I might not be right. What would line, if I was going to do a push, would you like that on?
Yeah.
And then now all of a sudden you've got everybody ready to do whatever the director wants.
Exactly.
And they're like, oh, that's the greatest idea. And you're like, I know, the DP was just saying it. And they're like, oh yeah. And you're like, cheers.
Yeah.
Like,
No, but it's the way,
that simple.
It's the way of sort of deconstructing that and still getting it to where you want. But I do that quite often with Steve. Is I'll turn to him and I'll go, "Did that suck? No, it didn't suck. It wasn't bad. No, because I'll lose track of it sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll overthink it so much.
Or you're like, you're into.
No, that was great. And then he'll often go like, I mean, I would probably push in a little later. I'm like, great, do that. Do that. Because go with your gut.
Because then the other thing I've always found too is like maybe some of the best thing an operator can do is you constantly have to reaffirm everyone around you's thought on that. Like if you ask your dollar grip and like, I would go earlier, you have to be like, go earlier.
Yeah.
Because if you don't involve them, then they'll never be involved
assuming
again.
they have good instincts.
Exactly. but even if it's bad instincts, and it's shit.
Yeah.
And you guys realize that together, and you're like, maybe it's not good. Or the director comes up and they're like, yeah, that push-in was wrong, and you go, that was my idea.
Yeah.
Then you're
helping. Take the hit.
Exactly, because then you're helping your team feel more connected with you, and they're not afraid of. You're saying like it's layers of fear. Then you just chopped off one of their layers of fear.
Yeah.
but your brain can now have that freedom to just be able to be in rhythm with whatever I've been calling it this new thing. It's gonna be my next tattoo. The risk box.
Okay.
Because everything that we all do in our job, from head to toe, is this risk box. From the people who decide what's going to be in it, it's going to be on the screen. It's a total fucking risk. Their money, their time, their energy, right? And it gets all the way down to like people like what we do, where we're literally moving the risk box to be like, oop, I should have tilted up too soon, took that risk wrong, screwed it.
Yeah.
To then the like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have put that piece of that material in that frame because it doesn't look it. So it's like everything is this risk, and you have no idea of whatever you're going to do with it. For anyone involved, is going to either be the make or break or failure of everything, and that's kind of.
But you're taking the chance.
But you're taking the risk.
Yeah, because you're making a choice.
Exactly. It's just the big risk box. It's weird. I feel like everyone does that. That's kind of what everybody. It's the risk box.
But I think that's what makes good operators great operators. Is it's never good enough.
No,
it's weird
never.
because it's two parts. It's never good enough. And you also have to know when it is good enough.
Yes.
And the thing about it is I often say, I'd rather them be happy and me be unhappy than me be happy and them be unhappy.
Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, I'm here to do their work.
Yeah,
And probably I'm never going to be like. I mean, I think there are maybe 3 shots in my career that I actually am sort of proud
I can
of
honestly
on a
say like
minor
head
level.
to toe that you would like in your deathbed be like, this is good.
I did that.
Yeah. But there's like the thing is too is like it's hard too because there's a fine line, and I think that's one of those things you learn in time. People have like told me some pretty funny stories of how they've learned that, and I've collected some on the way, but I don't know exactly for me when it is, but you always have that moment where you're on set where you're like, man, that was like they cut, and you're like, that is just the worst fucking take I've ever done.
Yeah.
And literally the director is like with the main actor, and they're like, we're circled that one. That's our favorite. And you're like, well, not only do I feel like shit from the take, but now I'm super embarrassed. Now I just feel 10 times worse about it. Yeah. And it happens to everyone, and it's like, there's learning that's like, okay, you do have to shut up. Like you can't let your internal dialogue run that.
Yeah, and that's a good. That's
it's a hard thing.
Especially, it's a really hard lesson for younger operators.
Oh.
I think there's this part that you think that they're going to come back 3 days later and go, "Why did you screw that up?" And it's like they're not, because
like
they loved it. They were watching it.
Like later on, they're going to be in the room and they're going to be like, it was garbage. We should have fired him right then. We should probably go shoot him now. Like,
exactly.
Jesus, he was the worst. Like, let's just call everybody know and tell him he's the worst operator.
Why are you ruining my life? But at the end of the day, and you just got to sort of shut up and
let it go. And then I think the other thing that I think I've noticed, and I'm sure this happens to you, is like the longer you go, the more people ask you, though, because they actually do really care. And that's when you learn as an operator where you have to learn to care without caring about what you care about. It's so vital.
Yeah, and I mean it's about the story, it's about the shot, it's not about you.
And then you learn how to be a really good car salesman too.
Yeah.
Because you really have to say, but then you at the same time, and it's like sometimes it's the hardest is to look at like the best take for every, like they're cheering and you're like, I don't want to be the neighbor. It has nothing to do with my life.
I didn't like my pan over there.
It's
Nobody
nothing
cares.
to do with that.
Yeah.
But we totally see this thing coming. We see the actor waiting. I didn't see her in my monitor. No one's.
There's something that didn't
it's
work.
wrong.
Yeah.
It's like you learn as an operator how you really do end up having to be like that same risk of vocalizing because then you'll feel 1,000 times worse. If you know that and you leave,
you got to say it. Yeah.
You'll feel so like you'll then you should be fired later. Like they should come to your house and fire you later because that's when you're not being honest. And I always felt like I did that probably in the first few years because of fear. Everyone does, but didn't say where
something.
You don't say something because you don't know how. You don't know how to articulate it. Everyone's done it.
Well, and I think in that instance, like you said, I came around the corner too early and I totally saw the actor before he's supposed to come in getting ready. So it literally doesn't work. You've got 2 choices. And they love the take. Everybody goes crazy. Nobody saw it for some reason at the monitor. They were looking at the other camera.
Because they were paying attention to the story.
Yeah, or they were looking at another camera.
It was
or whatever.
Something.
But you got 2 choices. One is you say nothing, in which case someone is eventually going to catch that and go, why the hell didn't you say something?
Yes.
Or the other is you take your knocks.
Yes.
And when you do, by the way, you go up and you go, I screwed up. I came around that corner too early. I saw the actor waiting there. I apologize. We need to go again. And then if they want to decide not to or whatever, but
Then
you
you've
don't
walked
have a
away.
choice. You've got to
You've
own
done
up
the
because
right thing.
You're
You're
gonna get screwed either way.
Oh, yeah.
And what that will do, though, by the way, someone somewhere, the director's going to hate you, the actor's going to hate you. It just is what it is.
For the
but
moment.
the DP may look at you and go,
You're
you
on
know
my
what?
next job.
I'm really angry at you, but
Yeah.
you were honest
But
with me.
you were honest, and
we
you
didn't,
saved it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really hard lesson to learn.
It's hard because you'll say to yourself, like, wow, maybe
My career's over.
Maybe, yeah, exactly. Maybe I won't work with this person,
Yeah.
or man, I really thought I'd do this guy's next job. Maybe I won't now. And the truth is you may or may not, and it may have nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
But it's for sure if you didn't,
Yep.
even if you did get the job, could you sleep yourself? Would you be
Yeah, that depends
comfortable
on who
being
you are, but yeah.
Yeah, but I
you'd
think
hate
that's-
yourself. I'd hate myself for it. But and Don
that's good
Devine said a
operators.
really good thing about that. He said, and the only other thing I'll add to that is, if you're going to ask for another take, you better damn well be able to fix that
God,
problem.
yeah.
Because if you do another take and say,
Yeah.
I did it again, forget it.
There's-
you might as well not ask for it.
The only time that works again is if it's like you've made an adjustment to make that big happen,
Yeah.
and everyone's making that with you. And then if it happens one more time, and then they're all aware to it,
Yep.
then you're at least you got that one,
Yeah.
and you get one, and you
get
get that
one.
official like,
Yeah.
okay, now we've all moved. We were going to move on, but you said to fix something because you were right.
Yep.
We saw something wrong,
But you better nail this.
and now you nailed on the next one. And then they go, okay, now we see the actor changed and you changed, so it's not your fault.
Yep.
But if you start that downward spiral, and then you should have been
goes out
moving
of
on, and you're
control.
6 takes,
Yeah.
that's like what's crazy about that is the reverse will then happen by the third or fourth time. Now the fucking AD hates you. Now the director, like,
Because
it's
you ju-
it's like a game of Twister at that point. You're
There's-
just
yeah.
Okay,
And,
like,
and the
oh.
bottom line is it can happen and it just sucks.
and there's literally nothing that can be done.
Yep.
And it couldn't have happened any other way. And then you'll literally go to lunch or something will happen, and within 6 hours, no one remember what.
No one remember that. But I will say, if it goes on something like that and it spirals out of control, and like you said, the AD is looking at you going, dude, we had to be out of the scene. I will usually later on in the day go up and go, I just want to be right on top of this. I didn't expect that to happen that
Yes,
way.
exactly.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
But
that's
and again,
then-
take your knocks.
And that's I always think that's the difference between a good, like, that's to me is those are the subtlety notices that make you a better operator than the person who's not doing that. And that's what's going to take you from being pretty good at your job to being pretty great, because people will respect it. They'll be excited to share in having that kind of help on set.
And the other thing that going back to that it makes me think of, and I've had this happen before, is where they'll go, oh, we're moving on, and I'll go, can I just get one more? And you don't want to go into it. And I have an AD that I've worked with quite a bit, who she told me after the fact, she was with the director, and I said, why? And she just went over and she goes, listen, if Dave's asking for another one, just give it to him. Like,
trust.
There's
trust
a reason
the man.
that he wants
Yeah.
it.
It's very rare.
And
if
it
you
was this
would.
thing, and it was this thing where it's just like, you're in the middle of a move, and you're like, oh, you know what? There's a way that if I just come 1 foot to the left,
Gonna really.
I can connect all of these things and
Yes.
whatever. But and what you're doing, or at least what I'm doing, is I'm going, why didn't I see that before? But you don't know why, and it doesn't make a
And you
difference.
can't-
at that
you
point.
wouldn't have if you
Yeah.
did it. You wouldn't be.
Yeah.
It can't happen.
And I'll
that
have
way.
the director come up and go, why are we going? Why do you want to go again? It's just like, well, I can just connect these things. And they might say to me, you know what?
Yeah, it's not worth it.
I don't care. It's not worth
Or
it.
they
And I'm
might
like, great. Or
brilliantly
they might go,
shit, I need that.
that's
Yeah.
going to save me and
that,
whatever.
That gets this thing that I needed my story to have.
Yeah.
Even if it's creative and or technical,
Yep.
it could save. It could honestly. It's the difference between you could have just taken two scenes that would never work together and just made them work.
Yeah.
And you don't know how important that could be for the story.
And
you told
sometimes it
later.
just happens. You don't.
and
you
it,
don't
and it's
design
just
it.
natural.
You've been operating for 20 years. You ever get nervous when you get on set?
I still get nervous, definitely. I think it's a different nerve sensation than before. There's that time where it's like you're nervous about what you're actually going to do. Like the ability to do the job itself.
Can I actually pull it off?
Can I get this shot done? And that, I think, stays with people, probably for forever, because there's still going to be some shots that will make you feel that way. Even if the day is super nice and mellow, you will get those shots. So that does still happen, but it happens so much less. But then again, I also think to myself, it's like, yeah, but the requirements of the shots are getting harder. So it's natural to say, well, the shot's harder, so there should be a little. Honestly, up till like working with Inaritu was probably the biggest change, because I'd worked with some pretty established directors from that point already, and you hear a lot of stories and you create these like ideas of what it's going to be. And I kind of had been through a lot of those. And then I kind of worked with like the most notorious, and it wasn't easy, but like I would do every move with him. Like absolutely love working with the guy. Like it is crazy. It was crazy during it, but you won't find someone where the craziness is like it's not the negativity I think there is like attached to a lot of way people describe that. And that to me helped me a lot because I went through like a 10-month war with like very hard things and very hard circumstances. And it wasn't just the director, but after I kind of got over that intimidation factor, because he to me was and still is one of the best directors ever.
There's
you know,
no
I mean, his
question.
movies are just phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah.
his films are just crazy. So there was a lot of personal intimidation there because I looked up to him so much, and I still do. Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
But I think after that, there's also like you're working for someone who, for a Steadicam operator, has been responsible for some of the best Steadicam that I feel like I've seen, or some of the most interesting moments, recognizable moments of like, holy shit, that's how you tell a story with a camera.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa. So that intimidation was there on top of like a higher energy person. But after that, I don't feel the same. I don't feel nervousness the same way. I feel nervousness not about so much can I do the shot, can I do it the person. The nervousness is like, well, it's either going to work or it's not now. It's like I'm nervous to know that who I am may not be what's good for these people, and I'm nervous that might not be the case because I'm totally cool to be like, well, just this ain't a good fit, man. That's
Yeah,
cool.
it's not going to work.
Like,
yeah.
but I'm nervous because I don't want that to happen ever. I'm just aware that like there's different people out there, and that's nice because I've had some of the, like I've had. I mean, I guess I'll say it because I don't mind because it's silly to me, but it's just different. Everyone said Noah Baumbach is very difficult to work with. I couldn't have had a sweeter gentleman to work with. I don't know how you find a more sweet, sincere coach. I'm sure when stressful moments are happening and you're in the fire, maybe he doesn't come across right. But I think it's all how you're taking it too. And that's what Alejandro changed me is I realized that so much of my nervousness is my effect. It is me bringing
internal.
this to the table. Yeah. It's my fear about how I'm going to react to this, how I'm going to do this. It's not nervousness of anything else. And I'm okay with that because I know that nervousness is coming from this desire to be like, I'm not going there to prove myself. I'm going there to do the best job I can.
Yeah.
And that may be hard today, but I know I can do it.
Yeah.
So it's just that like first day jitters that happen. But like I'll occasionally get nervous if it's a shot where it's a little dangerous or I feel like it's a little that. I'll get nervous because I think the older I get, the more realization that I'm not invincible.
Yeah, it's like when you're a kid until you fall off your bike.
You don't know that it's going to hurt.
Fall off your bike.
And I do think ever since my first fall, there's a new line of nervousness that happens because it's real.
That's normal. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I would, if I didn't get nervous, I'd be worried about my level of interest in doing my job.
Mm-hmm.
Because why am I not getting nervous? Because I know I can do it. I'm getting nervous because I'm excited.
And you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah,
right?
and I'm nervous because I'm going to have to maybe I'm going to have to say something to a director that he doesn't want to hear, but I'm nervous because I know it's hard to do, but I'm not nervous about why I'm doing it
Yep, I understand.
anymore. So
Yeah.
I guess it will never go away, but I just think it's crafted to be the right kind of nervous energy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't feel invincible, but I feel emotionally invincible, and I think that's what makes it feel easier. Is
makes
it's just
sense.
I don't and it's not money. Like I'm not carrying that. I don't like I'll lose a job because I can't afford to rent. I mean, I still can't afford my rent. Who gives a shit? It's just, that's LA. But no, it's just that feeling. It's like you don't, I'm not worried about that shit, but it doesn't change this sense of freedom that I'm going to have an open mouth. I still mind every word that I say. I'm so in my head about taking care of 100 people.
Yeah.
Because going to set for me is that's the nervous energy now, is how do I have 50 people who may not like me? How do I motivate them to want to get the best out of it? Not for me, but for everyone else. And I'm sacrificed to that.
For the project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is, but I mean, every fucking day is nerve-wracking because I don't care if you've been working for 2 years or 200. I'm still going to have a nervous energy about treating you right because that's the most important thing.
Huh.
The problem with nervousness on set is it is like the worst poison.
Well, but in the sense that you don't want them to not have faith in your abilities.
Yes, and then it's because it can spill out on others.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're not nervous about your
It's a
task,
domino.
and it could domino effect so hard.
Yeah.
So I've always felt like trying to always stay true to your person when and your good person, your happiness person is probably the key to nervousness. And I've learned that in a few like specific things. But
agreed.
I don't want the job to not still make me feel nervous to some degree. I want to work with people who I'm nervous about performing for their expertise because I want to work on that level.
You want to give them what they want, and you respect
and I enjoy
what
that.
they
But
want.
I'm more nervous about. I mean, in all honesty, it's like to me it'd be kind of scarier right now working for really bright genius 25-year-olds than it would be working with genius 55-year-olds because I feel like with the 55-year-olds I'd have more commonplace. But now to show younger kids things because they know more than I do now and they're half the age, it's like that would be scarier.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And you mentioned about being around Darius Kanji and Inarritu and all these people, and I don't know if you found this, but I've found when I've finally worked with people who are my heroes, who are just done these unbelievable things, Deakins is one, Joel Cohen is one. Just at the end of the day, what you realize is they're just people.
They're just people too.
And they're really talented. They're super talented. They're also in many ways super lucky, not to diminish what they've done, but that they've taken the experiences that they're in and made the most of them and persevered and not given up.
And it's
all,
worked.
All these things that actually aren't really that sort of like mystical.
No.
It's just, and they definitely have talent. There's
Yes,
no
of course,
question about that. But they're just hardworking individuals who, by the way, will laugh when you say, I could get a little higher.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're people too.
Yeah.
And it takes getting to that point too where that's where nervousness really changes. And I think for me it was spending, like I had 2 or 3 movies, not back to back, but in close enough time with those kind of figures. And I think that was like they're just people, but I think like when you're in your career trying to get to those things, I always felt like what was the way, because it's like I've heard like some people like, like, oh, I'm going to try to get this like big director or DP to like really like me. And I'm like, well, that's the first way you're not.
That's
like,
never
that's
gonna
just
work.
not like,
just
whatever
be
you think,
yourself.
just
And if
be
it works-
yourself.
It's like going into school and going, you 3 people are going to be my friends. It's like, it doesn't work.
Not going to work that way. So it's like, I've always felt like with those is like, just keep it mellow, try to keep to your own things. And you can always be direct. You can always be honest. You can always say something that may sound taboo as long as you're saying it with the intent to like alleviate that. Like, it's kind of just the common like golden rule kind of thing.
Bingo.
But yeah, still fearful of every job. I mean, I actually did this. This happened not that long ago where I got a little heated and I said, can't you just see that all I'm trying to do is make your job faster and easier? I was yelling at someone while saying that. And then you think about the stupidity, but you then it occurs to you like that's what I'm more afraid of.
And when the problem is internal, actually.
When internally, it's like I'm literally sitting here going, I shouldn't. It's good that I care.
Yeah.
But now I'm making myself care so much that I'm now making it
becoming
a problem.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's like, and then you just. That's this decade.
That's the head game.
Yeah.
I get you.
And I'm sure next decade it'll be like.
Next decade, trust me, it'll be your knees and your kid.
Yeah,
and your kid isn't listening to you.
Yeah,
exactly. That's what it'll be.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, listen, I could do this for another 4 hours, but at some point this has to stop.
Yeah,
so
for
thank
sure,
you.
for sure.
I'm gonna let you take us out with a question that I leave with everybody, which is younger operator moving up. Someone starting in the business. What is your advice to them in order to succeed, and or what advice do you wish you would have had at that point in your career?
What advice?
Clock's ticking. Come on.
Yeah, clock ticking. It's like I think what I would want to impart, what is the most important thing to succeeding as an operator to me for someone coming up would be understanding the value of knowing your place about how to help the whole team. It's not about being an operator. It's not about being a Trinity or a Steadicam or a Ronin or a this guy or that guy or anything. It's about knowing how to help everybody to achieve the same goal, the best results, and that's it. And that's not the task. That's not the shot. That's not the gear. That's how you treat people. That's how you work together with people, and that's how you care about your job. And if you put this much time and energy to about all the tech shit and the bullshit and all the things we want to care about in our job, and you put your attention on the people and the jobs you're working with, you're going to succeed because you took care of the most important things. And I think when I think back about what I was missing in my career is I felt individualized. I felt like I had to go out and be the best to get to a place. And I do think it worked, but I do think it worked in a way where it left me without the things that I need most importantly every day now when I go work, which is like the confidence and comfort and respect and trust of the people around you. I can't imagine for everyone who, if you had all the money in the world right now and you weren't going to work, the one thing you definitely miss would be being on set with the people you love, making something you love. So that's the only important thing. The rest is just, I don't know, irrelevant stuff we do to do a job. Yeah, that's all I know.
What a great episode. I had such a blast talking with Ari, which is, of course, why it went a little longer than usual, but hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you like the episode, please share us, follow us, like us, pass us around, talk about us over lunch, whatever it is that gets it out there. The website is theop.io, and Instagram is the same thing, so please check us out, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Thanks for listening.